sorry, not today, yesterday was the first day.
You want to start with it? With that one?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay, we want to welcome everyone out. This is there we go. To our hopeful final budget workshop, getting close to the end. Sooner or later, it's going to have to be the final one, depending on that. So, thank you for being here. Those that are present. I know we got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, but we're going to jump right in. So, Councilor Stoddard just providing me with some information here. So, I'm going to pass this out to the council, and it sounds like he has a little story to share for this information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After, looking at the budget, we're getting down to the finalization of it. This little piece of paper that the mayor was kind enough to pass out to anybody was a success for my department, which I think everybody knows. I had over a $300 million budget and did business in the United States, Canada, and overseas too, and it works quite well. But 5-point formula for success, and if he wants to pass that out to the department heads, that's fine. But here are the 5 points. When you ask yourself exactly what should be in the budget, would it simplify operations is number 1. Will it create process efficiencies, number 2. Will it deliver on acceptable returns, number 3. Will results be low cost, high value? And the last one, can we execute it flawlessly? So anyway, those worked for me for almost 30 years with the Simplot Company, and we did quite well with it. The other story I'd like to tell is, this little story reminds me of not all departments, but some of the departments that we might be looking at. So here it is. A Japanese company called Toyota and an American company called General Mills decided to have a canoe race on the Missouri River. Both teams practiced long and hard to reach their peak performance before the race. On the big day, the Japanese won by a mile. The Americans, very discouraged and depressed, decided to investigate the reason for the crushing defeat. A management team made up of senior management was formed to investigate and recommend appropriate action. Their conclusion was the Japanese had 8 people paddling, 1 person steering, while the American team had 7 people steering and 2 people paddling. Feeling a deeper study was in order, American management hired a consulting company and paid them a large amount of money for the second opinion. They advised, of course, that too many people were steering the boat while not enough people were paddling. Not sure of how to utilize the information, but wanting to prevent another loss to the Japanese, the paddling team's management structure was totally reorganized to 4 steering supervisors, 2 area steering superintendents, and 1 assistant superintendent steering manager. They also implemented a new performance system that would give the 2 people paddling the boat greater incentive to work harder. It was called the Rowing Team Quality First Program. And my only point in this is that I think that in some of the instances here that we've seen so far, and we'll see probably in the future, that we have a lack of people that are working on the ground level, supplying services for our taxpayers, and we need less of the assistance to the assistants to the assistants and more people on the ground level to service our taxpayers. And I'm under my 5 minutes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, and that wisdom implemented. I'm sure it'll be well noted as we move through this process. So thank you so much. We'll make sure we make some copies of that for our department heads, managers. So with that, we'll jump right in. I see Raylyn starting to make her way to the podium on that. And then there was a few emails that you should have received. I think Debbie had printed this one out for you all to have, so we can review that as we go through. And this is really kind of just a general session, really to kind of try to button some things up. I know there may still be a few questions, but try to get as many of those answered tonight. Maybe a long night, so buckle up for that. And we do have granola bars and oranges and a few bottles of water, so maybe we'll go until everything runs out over there, and we'll go from there. So, but anyway, Raylyn, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a packet. It's a lot bigger. It starts with general fund on the top. Should have been clipped together. That's kind of where I'm going to start. Kind of keep it nice and simple, review the budgets, and then answer any questions along the way. So with this first, these are all, I originally gave you these printouts with your books. They're kind of long-term projections, but they break down revenues and expenditures by fund, and you'll see 2 past, or 1 history, which is 23 the 24 actual that you passed last year, the 25 proposed, and then projections out to 2029. It doesn't mean that we're setting any of the future budgets, it's just kind of to show you, based off of the trends that I'm looking at right now, this is where I foresee us going. Anything can change, passage of budget, economy going down, all of those things. So, but if you have questions on these numbers, just let me know. For the general fund, if you kind of look at the 2 pages together, you can see total revenues. For the general fund, all departments is $44,910,279. Whereas the expenditures are just a little bit over that, $45,457,160. So you can see that there is a planned use of fund balance of $546,000. But at the bottom, you'll see that I have calculated the 30% of total expenditures of what that is. So that cash balance, obviously the 2024 estimate is still an estimate because we haven't finished 2024. But for 2025, you can see that cash balance does drop below the 30% reserve amount. Now, do I think this will actually happen? No, because there are quite a few projects in the fund balance, projects that were budgeted this year that are not going to happen. How close that number will be, I don't know. At this point in time, I will know more, I would say in December, when we finally close out all the books. But that's kind of where it is right now, because I have to look at expected plan use of all expenditures being used. So this is proposed without, these numbers are proposed without taking foregone. So I have not included the foregone amount included in here. But this does include everything else that we kind of talked about, as well as the removals. This includes a 3% COLA and health insurance, which there's a couple discussions on health insurance that we can talk about as well, because there's a couple scenarios. We got the final numbers and the calculations, and they're pretty high. So when I break down the totals in as soon as we go through all these funds, or if you have questions, I can go through it now if you'd like, but to kind of see the differences. So any questions on general fund before I move forward? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Raylan, thank you. I'm not sure how to pose this question. I want you to talk about the contingency fund going below the 30% again. Run that by me one more time. I'm having a hard time swallowing that, so give it to me again, please.
So the contingency fund, it's all included within the general fund. To use 30% of the 2025 budget general fund expenditures, that's that bottom number of $13,210,789. That is 30%. However, if we plan with based off the revenues that are expected and the budgets that we currently have in here, the cash balance will drop below to $13,150,668. So we'll drop below that 30% reserve.
And you're okay with that? Because I'm not.
It's not my preferential. It does look like a red flag on our audit. And so, but this is currently what's proposed. So this is what I'm showing you.
So, okay, so help me again, then. We're $500,000 into that? Tell me what,
It's about 60,000.
60,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to find 60,000 to at least get us to the 30%, which is my minimum in my mind. I wish it was more than that, but we've had that discussion, so. Okay, we'll come back to that then, but I just want to, on the record, Mayor, say I'm not comfortable with that, and apparently our finance director wishes it weren't so too, so.
No question.
Council Register?
Just what's the recommendation from like is it the League of Cities or the Association of Cities?
So the AIC, I believe, is 25%. GFOA, which we use, which is Government Finance Officers Association, there's a calculation that's involved. It's not just a straight percentage. And I know Rochelle and I are looking to move to that, but it's more risk-based, which means that it calculates based off of our risk and current funding and exposure to risk. But it's a complicated calculation, so
So we don't have that calculation at this point?
not at this point in time.
So the recommendation then is 25%?
I will say in our financial policy, we put 30%.
Okay, so 30%.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The 25% is from AIC, the Association of Idaho Cities.
So 25 to 30%?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Doty?
Yes, thank you. Raylan, what projects are still out there, though, from that fund that we could cancel at this point that haven't been started that would save that money? Maybe we can figure it out from what projects haven't been started yet. Like I know the train, silencing of the train, and we haven't got a commitment from the county to put any money into that, so that would be nice. If they're not going to donate any money to it, it probably isn't going to happen anyway.
I know I sent you guys the capital list. So for capital projects, specifically for general fund, for the proposed general fund, there's 4 items. There's a fire prevention plans examiner vehicle for $63,000. There's a fire prevention inspector public educator for $93,000. That's a vehicle as well. There's a building safety vehicle for $65,000, and then the mapping GIS server for $20,000.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yeah,
to follow up,
Councilor
I'm talking about the ones we approved, I guess it was 2 budget cycles ago,
Oh.
maybe, those projects,
Those
not necessarily.
projects,
That's okay, and then I think there was 8 or 10,
Yeah,
somewhere in there?
there's last year's budget.
Right, but that
Right
money's
now.
still there if we haven't started those projects, right?
That is correct.
Or-
I don't have a total update on those. I can definitely get those to you guys.
But we
it's
could
not-
cancel one of those to get to the 30% is what I'm saying, if need be.
I believe we have canceled one in the Simplot Stadium upgrades. We've kind of not started that project at all.
That one is not started,
Yeah.
so, and that was a pretty
I
big.
believe that was either 600,000 or 800,000.
It was actually, so 1.1 million total, 800,000 I think was earmarked for Simplot, and then 300,000 for O'Connor.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, so if
And
there's
neither of those
4,
have started.
and you don't have to mention what they are at this moment off the cuff, but I'm just saying we could cancel one of those, which would get it up to over the 30% mark, if need be. Because you're not including that money in the 13 million, it's sitting there earmarked, but technically it hasn't gone anywhere, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Stoddick?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Raylene, I talked to some of the ICRM people on the increase in the insurance and stuff, and they said usually when the pool narrows, the prices go up, and we know we've lost the county, I believe, because they don't have ICRM anymore. And I was just wondering whether you looked at that part of it relative to the pool itself, and has it diminished substantially or not? Do you know?
I have not looked into the pool of ICRIM to see if it's diminished or not. I know that there's several counties that are not included in that.
I was just looking for a reason why it went up, and that's what they told me, the pool went down.
Yeah, so I know they also talked about reinsurance rates, and those rates have significantly increased.
So, okay, thank you.
Councilor Richards, do you have another?
Yeah. So the numbers that you were talking about at that, where we are percentage-wise, and we're looking at this email from Counselor Doty, so the numbers that you have don't include any changes, right?
So the email the list that Councilman Doty put out, those changes have already been implemented with what the mayor gave for direction.
I know, but if tonight, if the council decided, as an example, I'm just looking, I'm trying to find one here. let's say for the community outreach assistant, Counselor Doty has given reasons why that might not be something we want to do. The savings is $24,000, and then the mayor's made his case, but it hasn't been voted on yet, right? So right now, that $24,000 is included in that budget, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so when I'm looking at the total numbers, for Counselor Doty has savings of $1,747,000 and change, and then the savings as proposed is $1,207,000. So if we were to take all of Counselor Doty's suggestions, we would be saving $500,000.
Not all of Councilman Doty's suggestions are from general fund. Some of them are.
So do you know how, like, ballpark, like what that might be, just so we have an idea? Because we're looking for $60,000, right? So I guess I hope I'm making sense, but I guess what I'm getting at is that there's still these suggestions to go over that he's made, so how much of the suggestions he's made can be taken from general fund to make up that 60,000, and then where we may even be ahead?
So I believe all of the general fund ones were, because like the intersection of Linden and Cleveland, that's out of the street fund, that's not general fund. VRT is not out of the general fund, it's the street fund. The
What are-
facilities person is kind of all funds, it's not just general fund.
Okay. The Parks and Recreation Admin Assistant,
That was already removed, and it was replaced with a Parks Maintenance Specialist, which is in the Parks and Rec Fund.
okay, but is that a general fund thing?
No.
Okay. So how about I'm gonna guess all these other positions were removed, so that wouldn't matter. The Community Outreach Assistant, would that be a general fund piece?
That would be general fund, yes.
Okay, so that's $24,000. I'm just looking at numbers. So the only thing on his list is the Community Outreach Assistant, where we can get $24,000.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so then we're behind whatever the difference is, if that's the way that it went. Just- Thank you.
Okay, no other question at this time? Proceed.
So if you go to the next fund, that's the CEC fund, which has been, you'll see in the revenue, there's a transfer in from general fund, which has been budgeted. There's a $500 in rodeo lease revenue that is not accounted for here. I just found that out an hour ago, so.
Mr. Mayor,
that
just
will-
one second. Do we have this so we can put it up on a screen for our folks out in the crowd?
Yes.
Is this available?
Yes.
They all kind of look like they're from the city, except for Dave maybe, out there, so maybe they don't need it. But if it was quickly available, that might help.
You fill out the Ford State. I'm trying to carry along here with my calculator, but it'd be easier if I could follow it and refer back to it.
So within the CEC fund, you'll see the transfer in from general fund. This is to make this fund whole. The only change here that we talked a little bit about it, but the CEC superintendent is now overseeing facilities, so we moved a portion of those payroll dollars to facilities. to allocate, since part of that is his job duties. So that's why you'll see a reduction in salaries. Okay, any questions? This usually zeroes out. We try to zero this out every year and not carry a fund balance. And here it's supported by the general fund.
Okay, no questions.
Okay.
I can see.
Library fund. So there's been no changes to the library fund since Lacey presented to you. Other than the adjustments made to health insurance and the COLA. So. Go to street fund. So with the street fund, the biggest adjustment is a reduction in the revenue. This is where the property tax was reduced to cover an increase in police and fire. And so you'll actually see a little bit of reduction in the 24 compared to, or the 25 compared to the 24 in the property tax. They do have a lot of one-time capital projects, and we are in the process of implementing the transportation impact fees. And so the hope would be that the capital would start to reduce here for some of the bigger projects and go to those impact fees. So, any questions here?
Yeah, is it possible to enlarge that
It's so tiny.
at all? There we go. Is that better, or would one more even help? Right there? Okay.
I think we have one copy if somebody needed to view it. So this is where a significant, in the street fund, a significant portion of fund balance would be used, and it's planned fund balance based off of capital projects, which there's quite a few within those, and I know Rob went over quite a few of them as well, so.
Counselor Alga, did you have a question on this one?
I did.
Okay.
But it's not on this one, it's, I'm still looking back at CEC.
That's okay.
So I'm a little behind. So I'm looking at CEC revenues, and I see that they get the rodeo lease, do they not get the college lease?
No, the college, that it goes into the Wolf and Maintenance and Plot Fund, the capital maintenance fund, that is part of that. So it goes into that capital fund. So, is where that goes.
And is there any revenue expected from the RV spots this year? Have we seen anything we can base that on?
Yeah, do you want to touch on that, or you want?
We talked about it. Right now, the trend, we haven't seen the expected increase. I mean, if it did increase, then that would be fantastic, and we wouldn't transfer the general fund to cover it. But right now, we haven't seen those happen.
And I think that's the charges for services,
That
correct?
is
So
under
there is
charges
some,
for
it's that
service.
second line down, for the 24,000 expected on that. So like I said, we do hope that to get to more around $100,000, but obviously we don't have the track record on that. And so a conservative estimate is at that 24,000 number. So that's what that charges for services is, specifically for the RV slips, if I'm not mistaken.
That
Is
is
that correct?
Yeah, and the only, I'm just asking these questions because we've always had a desire to try to get them towards the black as much as we could. But if we keep taking things off of what their income is, they're never going to get there.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, anyway, that's what I was looking at.
And I will say, I'm working with Juan to try to adjust the fee schedule to be competitive, like have different weekday rates instead of weekend rates and stuff like that. So
Okay,
we'll see if it helps.
thank you.
Any questions on the street fund before I continue forward? Okay.
Okay, we're good.
So with the airport fund, there's not been any changes, as you can see. The only change was, so the allocations, the cost allocation plan, the facilities, MS4 engineering, those get updated based off of any changes to the expenditures. And so with airport, now that we have final budgets in, those have all been adjusted, and so you can see airport actually is projected to have a surplus and an increase in fund balance of about $28,000, so.
Yes, Counselor Stoddard.
When we hired a new airport manager, I was under the impression that he was supposed to replace the current one, and that didn't happen, I guess. Know anything about that, or?
So, yeah, when my understanding was the director was a new FTP in addition to, not a replacement of, and so it added that position, and that became part of the budget, so.
Because I don't think that ever came before the council, did it, adding that, or was explained that way, or?
I thought it was. I don't know if
Maybe I missed
Van
it.
Geyer has any recollection on that or any of the council members, but I thought it was brought forward as a new appointed position, not replacing the airport manager, but as a new appointed position in that regards. Counselor Williams?
I concur, that was the discussion at the time, it was addition, not subtraction. And I think those words were used, so I was clear that that's what we were doing.
Okay, because like I say, before I went off that committee, I know that we had problems with the current one, so that's why we thought we needed somebody that had a little bit more experience and foresight, and that's why we hired the new person, so that's the reason I asked.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
could, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
please.
I can say this, Councilor Stoddard, the way that Scott is currently administrating out at the airport, there's good function and form and value for the people that are out there and how they're being used. And so I would support Scott in his use of his personnel out there. It was indeed a restructure though, so we can talk more about it later if you wanted to reach out to me.
That'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
So just future forecasting, as you know, when I believe Scott talked about it, but in this proposal, we kind of do have for 26, you can see the towers in there, and so there could be a significant increase for airport in the next couple of years if that grant does come through, so. For the Parks and Rec Fund, so as you can see, there is a use of planned fund balance for Parks and Rec. Within the budget for the maintenance and operation, there is a proposal of about $200,000 to redo the field next to Elevate. That's part of the budget proposal. It's not capital because it's just a lot of irrigation and staff time, but then they have to buy the irrigation supplies and stuff like that. And so that is a one-time project. That's why I feel there's an okay use of fund balance for this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Counselor Doty.
just to recap on that, do you know what parks were in there that we're going to refurbish, so to speak, or redo? Did we get a list of the parks that will be getting new
New playground equipment. I do not have that list. So you're referencing like when their presentation, they talked about like at Memorial Park, I think, Lions Park with the outdated equipment, wanting to update it. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
I think there was support for that certainly, but maybe a list of, we can get that out to the community of that if the budget gets approved, that those will be coming in when, maybe a timeline, so.
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
So I know the two parks that are getting the playground replacement are the Memorial and Luby Park, so.
Luby Park.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Counselor Stoddard?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This doesn't come out of the general fund, so any deficit, we could raise park fees, right?
So some of this, it's not necessarily coming directly from the general fund, but the property tax, it's a property, special revenue fund, so there is property tax associated with it. But any use of fund balance there, so yes, some of this is due, like, revenue is accumulated by fees, but a lot of this is supported by sales tax and property tax.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We've got the parking fund, which I got updated revenue projections. And we can definitely go into more discussion about this, but these, as you can see, the budget has significantly changed from a surplus to a deficit for 2025. And part of this is due to, we have the ongoing lease costs for the meters, but this $32,000 would be required to come from the general fund. I just got this, and so I have not budgeted for this quite yet, other than to update this so you guys have this information. But this is one of the things we will have to figure out.
Counselor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Raylan, again, help me process here. That deficit grows over the coming. There is never a point in the projected forecast where that deficit doesn't grow. What's going on?
So this is the total deficit, and I know that the car park did quite a bit of analysis based off of the current fees. They reduced the projection because the usage is down in the revenues, so they projected originally 40%, and they're getting between 10 and 15% usage in downtown parking spaces, so they've adjusted the revenues. With the expenditures, obviously the hours are pretty consistent, and so those don't necessarily decrease. And then the lease cost is it's like $9,000 a month, so it adds up to be pretty significant. And then they did reduce their management fee a little bit from, I believe, $3,200 to $2,000. So I think they're trying to work within what we have, but this is from their information, so.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Yes.
ask a question? So this council is in the middle of listening and hearing and even proposing some more changes that could affect that further. So this deficit could be even greater than what you have on paper here,
Yes.
depending upon the decisions the council makes. And so, so far, our parking meters are only costing the city a lot of money.
Yes, I
Okay.
mean, it's a significant amount when you start to add to it, but
Okay. All right. Obviously, there's more to take into account than just that, because they have a purpose.
Yes.
And a function, and they're serving the city in a way, but these numbers are, I don't know how to classify them, better not. These numbers are.
I don't know if it would be helpful. I'd be happy to send, I didn't print it out, but I'd be happy to send the council the letter that we received from Car Park with all the adjustments in their predictions, so you can read it. It's about a 2-page letter.
Perhaps for the workshop that we're doing in the near future, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just maybe one highlight item on there, the biggest, and there is a lease, as Raylan mentioned, that I think ends FY '29, so it'd be the next year after this is where that lease would go away. That's for the units themselves, because there's a decision whether to just pay for those all up front with fund balance, and has decided to not, but to rather extend that out over 5 years and to pay for that lease. And that lease is at approximately $120,000 a year. So that would drop off after FY '29, so you wouldn't have that cost incurred anymore. Without that, they would show a surplus, but again, you do have that lease for those 5 years, from now till basically FY '29 on it, so, yep. Okay, let's see the other green
I
lights.
have a
So-
question.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Councilor
So I just want to be clear that on the parking meters for 24-25, that they are charging us $412,499.
That's the revenue. So that's the revenue of what we would accumulate. The charge would be the $445,000.
Okay, so Car Park is charging us $445,189?
That would be the total expenditures to run that program, yes.
Okay, so the total expenditures to run the parking meters is $445,189 a year. And the revenue that we're making is $412,499, which means we are paying, taxpayers are paying out of the general fund $32,690 to have parking meters downtown. And then next year and the year after that and the year after that, it continues to grow until this lease drops off. basically.
Yes. And I will say, though, I only received 1 year projection from the car park, and so.
I
25 to
understand,
20
then, yeah, I understand your numbers can't be, I mean, how are you supposed to know? But the point being is that for this year, it's costing us $32,690 to have meters downtown.
Yes.
Okay. And so I guess we'll talk more about this at the parking workshop, how this lease works, and if we decide not to renew the contract, if we still have to pay that lease and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm in agreement that it seems sort of backwards to have parking meters and then we have to pay for it. I guess, in my opinion, if it's costing us $445,189 for them to serve the purpose of moving cars in and out, then that could have gone to staff, probably at a much lesser rate, which means that we could have maybe given that money to other staff that we needed. So it sounds like because I want to be clear that the money, this $445,000 or the $412,000, I guess, that we're paying, whatever it is, if we didn't have these parking meters, where could we be using that money?
So if we didn't have the parking meters, essentially, we wouldn't necessarily be collecting the 412,000, so.
So the $32,690 that we're going to be paying out, that comes from the general fund that could have been spent on other employees or whatever.
I mean, if the pay parking was never implemented, then the only pay parking would be under code enforcement, I guess, and so that's where the revenues would stay that were generated.
No, I understand, but we're gonna be spending $32,690 this year on the meters. So if we, if we didn't have that cost, we could be using that 32,000 anywhere in the general fund, which is police, fire, all of that kind of stuff, right?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
and then, of course, if we switch this and had staff running the meters, then, who knows what the revenue would be, I get that. But I just wanted to be sure that I had it right before I was thinking about that. Thank you.
Awesome. So with cemetery fund, as you can see, there is a deficit, planned use of fund balance. Essentially, there's 3 funds to cemetery. There's the cemetery operating fund, the cemetery capital fund, and the cemetery perpetual fund. I've been working with our lovely city clerk to identify really kind of the necessary needs that have been occurring that are immediately needed to be addressed. And so the capital expenditures in here were added, not proposed in the original budget, but added after the fact. The money that was budgeted for 2024 for the niche walls was used to replace some equipment that was needed immediately. And the niche walls were going to take quite a bit of time, almost a year, I believe, to get installed. And so we now have budgeted those into 25 because the equipment that was needed, the sexton out there just wasn't, he really can't hand dig. It's impossible at that job. So he really needs good equipment out there to help with that. So we did get that taken care of this year. And so that is why you'll see that additional capital increase for the cemetery fund. The total cash balance is all 3 of those funds. And so that includes the perpetual fund, which is very much restricted. So to cemetery purposes and long-term taking care of the cemetery. So just want to give a heads up on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Raylene, explain to me the shared sales tax number.
Oh, so that is the pass-through revenue that the sales tax, so cemetery used to receive sales tax, but that can be allocated to any of the special revenue funds. And so in 2024, 76,600 was allocated. That ended up being allocated to other departments instead of the cemetery.
So next year, it'll be just 0, period. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, Raylan, I'm trying to understand here, the cemetery's always been a healthy fund. They've typically done well over the years. And in 22, 23, they had a $200,000 surplus, and in 2 years, we're now at a $150,000 deficit. What was the change there? I need to understand that.
So for 24, there's a little bit of, there was kind of a double fill for cemetery because we had someone that retired and somebody that moved into a full-time position that was classified as a part-time, if I recall. Yeah. And so that kind of is an increase. The other increase that changed significantly was that the Parks and Rec Director and the Parks Superintendent were allocated to this fund, and no longer are they allocated to this fund.
Well,
So
that should make the cost go down, right?
so in 25, that is now happening, so costs are going down.
But we still have a $143,000 deficit.
So that is for the capital replacement. I mean, that essentially is the equipment and the niche walls. So the niche walls are $67,000, and then there's a project of doing a veteran memorial at the cemetery for about $70,000. And so that $140,000 is both of those projects.
Okay, and so in the following year, we should be close to even again? if Things
Yes,
go right.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I just interject that some of the equipment that was purchased up there was a safety issue because it had been pretty well depleted over the years and not kept up with maintenance issues. And so it was to the point of safety coming to even the customers with funerals and whatnot up there. So we felt like it was kind of an immediate need that we needed to take care of it.
Okay.
So Economic Development Fund, this is, the majority of this fund is, this is where a lot of the furniture purchases were made to use up the cash balance for City Hall. And so that's why our goal is to use up all the cash balance. So that's why you see the deficit, because we want to use up the cash balance in this fund to, instead of having it hold a fund balance. So it's our goal in finance to make sure that the cash balance decreases. Currently, what we do and what we've done in the past is budget a transfer in to cover the cost of our economic development department. And then there's been two folds to it, that part, and then the second part has been taking care of this facility while it was under TVC lease. Now that that's not happening and those expenses have moved to the City Hall fund, or City Hall and General Fund, we want to just use up this cash balance and potentially move economic development under General Fund, since it with the same revenue, so.
Counselor Register.
Yes, how many employees are there in economic development?
There's two.
The personnel fee of $264,000, is that salary or is that salary with benefits and retirement, or?
That's everything, so salary, benefits, health insurance, Percy, all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, Ray, then, I know you kind of explained this, but I want to make sure. So you have $226,000 here coming from urban renewal as revenue,
Yes,
but urban renewal is not contributing near that much money right now, right?
that is the same amount of money that they're contributing currently, yes,
Currently.
yes.
And that's expected to continue?
Yes, as I gave in the urban renewal presentation, they have enough funding without a new urban renewal area to last two or 3 years, depending on projects. So if after the second year, we would have discussions of picking this up by general fund.
Okay.
If urban renewal did not bring another allocation area, or the north did not pick up significantly.
So the next prospective 2 budget years, we should be whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we get into quite a few capital funds. With capital, a lot of things, especially in the capital fund, like this year, we expected a project budgeted for $350,000 and it came in at $70,000. And so a lot of sometimes that happens, sometimes you budget for a project and it comes in more. And so we kind of give a little leeway with the capital fund of using the fund balance because we don't want to accumulate such a high balance. We want to use it on the replacement capital. But there is a threshold of not bringing it down too low either. So with the 24, I foresee definitely not using fund balance and actually putting more fund balance in there, which means 25 will look better than this, but I have to wait until 24 to actually see those results. So, but I've sent over the capital list to you guys if you have any questions or, but that's the capital fund.
Okay, I don't see any at the moment.
Okay. So with fire capital, over the last couple of years, they've had a significant fund balance that they've been using on different projects. And so we did last year introduce a sanitation franchise fee that made this ongoing capital to fund this. But as you can see, the fund balance has definitely reduced. And so with talking with the chief, we'll have to either look at transfers or grants or let this fund balance accumulate and be slow about our capital costs. So there's a couple of options. They're also in the process of looking at impact fees because those need to be updated. And so I think some of the, not the repair and maintenance, but some of the bigger capital items could be purchased with impact fees, so. And then we have police impact. So, these are just items that are approved on the CIP currently. So this includes weaponry and the remodel at CPD to help with the addition of officers. So their fund balance is currently accumulating still. We have the requirement in impact fees to use it within 8 years, or we have to return it. And so police is also working to update their CIP so we can look at different projects for them.
Can I have a question?
Yes, Councilor Register.
Just because we have some of the administration here from the police department, is there anything else that you guys wanted to discuss or talk about or anything with this budget, or is it good? You're good? Okay, thank you.
So then with park impact fees, as we talked about, we removed one of the mowers. The second mower that's still on here is requested within the impact fees. And then we have 2 park build-outs is what we have. We did take the conversation about the parking lot, and we did delay that a little bit. So for Griffiths Park. So that lighting is no longer included in this request. Fire impact, the only thing that's currently requested in here is the lease payment for the trucks. And so that was approved last year, or in 24 actually. And so that will be something that will be ongoing for 10 years. But we're also updating the CIP for fire. And so that will be something that will be coming forward as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Register.
Since we have admin here for fire, was there anything you wanted to discuss about this budget outside of the negotiations or what she was talking about?
Thank you, Councilor Register. Nothing in the CIP, but I did want to bring up an operating when we get to that point. I requested for responsibility.
Okay.
You can do it at any time if you want. I don't mind taking a break for a minute.
Thank you, really.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Rick Frawley, Fire Chief. On the heels of what we just mentioned about the union negotiations, we actually had a very fruitful process that just concluded yesterday. Special thanks to Councilmember Doty, Ray Lynn, Shelley, Matt. Big shout out to Chief Daniels in the back. He was the key fire department negotiator, and of course our members of the union. We had a really successful component and a really successful process, I believe, and we built more relationships. That said, I come before you with one request. We're working internally with our team members in finance for our deputy fire chiefs, and we have a pay plan that has been put together, which is addressing all of the positions that are unrepresented outside of the union, but I'm asking for a special request for my deputy chiefs to increase that position. We can handle that with salary savings internally within the organization by utilizing a consolidation of computer programs and IT, as well as deferring a position that would be a shared accountant position with the police department, but that would get my deputy chiefs to the place that they need to be in terms of the average in the valley. And I stand for questions.
Any questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Chief, again, help me understand. Let's slow it down, say it again. Maybe I'm just tired. There's a path forward, and Raylan's on a break, but I'm sure she'll chime in. There's a path forward that works to be able to meet this proposal with salary savings. But is that just for this year, or will we have to iron that out the following year differently, or, because what I wouldn't want to do is give it to them this year and then take it away next year, because that salary savings was only for this year. But I guess the big question is there a solution that gets you what you're requesting? Maybe that's the better way to ask the question.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Williams, yes, there is. By readjusting how we use our programs and systems internally, putting a lot more of that work back onto the deputy chiefs. I'll use policy and procedure as an example. Currently, we have Lexipol, which is a program for about $13,000. Chief Daniels has turnkey policies and procedures that can be in place within the next 6 months. That would forego a $13,000 cost to the city. So that's 1/3 of what I'm looking for. The other piece would be savings in the shared accountant position that we don't need right now in the fire department. So that would be a cost sharing that could also add to that component. And then the final piece would be recognizing that this is just an incremental change just for this one classification. The city's addressed my position, the city's addressed the positions below deputy chief, but the deputy chief position is so important to me because they're the succession plan. They're the future of the organization. They're the people that do the heavy lifting. And I really need to take care of those people because, you know, they make me look good. And without that, I couldn't do my job. So I need to put all my energy into those 3 positions.
Sorry, Chief, I wasn't aware you had deputy chiefs. Who are they?
So it's...
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, really, who they got? You remember the presentations. And quite frankly, I mean, they're all great. They're all rock stars. They all have a different perspective, which I love. But Chief Daniels back there is awesome. Not to ask Councilmember Doty too much in front of the group here, but he rocked it in that negotiations and brought everybody together and kept it very harmonious, problem solving, and building that team that we need here in the fire department.
Mr. Mayor, may I continue?
Yes.
So I know this is an unplanned moment for you, but now the wheels are turning, and first of all, perhaps, kudos to you, Chief Frawley. In a very, very short time, in 2 years, the way you've been able to administrate and organize and set up the Caldwell Fire Department for the city of Caldwell is nothing less than stellar, and thank you for all of the sleepless nights, I'm sure, but that comes with the job, right? It leads me to a follow-up question then, as it relates to, because what you're talking about is within your budget, you have some room to make this work. How much autonomy do you have or latitude, once we approve your budget, to work within your budget as the fire chief. I want to know, do you have we gifted you, once we approve your budget, to say, Chief Frawley, as long as you stay within your budget, I don't want to hear from you again, or is your autonomy restricted in your budget? Is that question clear, or?
It is, sir. We have a lot of autonomy, but where our hands are tied are position determinations, because we work with human resources to determine the value of a position. And I think that's probably where our most friction comes from, based on the fact that where I value a position compared to, say, CUNA or Midstar. Sometimes we're comparing apples to apples, sometimes it's apples to oranges, but the story that I tell is for this administrative position, I was reached out to by a very high-ranking chief officer in the Valley who had been with his agency for 20-plus years when that vacancy came up in October of last year, and he said, Chief, I want to come work for you. What do you pay? And I told him, and I can't do that. So I want to be able to be a destination department that keeps and retains our people, where the junior firefighter that's entering today will be the fire chief in 20 years, and this is how we do it.
Thank you, Chief. My opinion is you're the chief of police. If you're not capable of doing that, then we hired the wrong chief of police, but we did hire the right chief of police, and I think it's unfortunate that your hands would be tied by someone else trying to make those determinations for you. As long as it's within your budget, I'd like to see you have that autonomy that you need to allocate those resources, especially for your deputy chiefs, who are all appreciated, by the way, and make sure that we are working in a succession plan and some of those things you're working for the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's keep him as the fire chief.
That's okay, yeah.
What is your name?
Rex Ingram? No, we need Rex.
You'll do both. Counselor Register.
I think you were first, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this may be for Ray Lynn. So if we approve what the chief is presenting today, there was a split cost I heard. So where would the other, I don't know if it was split at half or 33% or whatever it was, but where would that cost have to be absorbed?
Is this more than what we talked about?
It's less.
No, I'm talking about for the rates.
Sidebar.
And no, it's
With how- So it's not the 64?
7180, just for them.
Oh. Okay. So, I will say, like, we've been working together, and there was a proposal that did change already in the budget for deputy chiefs and chiefs to increase the budgets. We work with that. We added longevity to the chiefs and the deputy chiefs for fire admin as well as fire prevention, because they did not have that, and to make it very concise with and similar. So we did make those adjustments. It sounds like this is a very significant increase from what we have already discussed. And so if that was to happen in the general fund, it would increase that deficit. There's not really room to pull anywhere else, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Except I'm a little confused then, because didn't the chief just tell us he found the money to pull?
Well,
So
some of that, some of that is from, and I'm kind of a little confused, because part of that increase that we talked about already, that increase was, I mean, part of that I thought was already offset by software. So
Mr. Mayor, can I
I'm a
recommend
little
this, that we
confused.
take a little break here and
So-
at some point, let them figure out what they're talking about and come back so that we have it clear on.
Got it. Do you want to?
Yeah, I want to give my
question?
comments, and then maybe you guys can discuss it and come back and see if we can do this. But I think that these are the things that are important, right? Like, in my opinion, as far as budget is concerned, is taking care of our employees the best that we can, and making sure that we are the destination city, because we're the destination city for everything else, for the lights, for our downtown, for all this stuff. So we need to make sure that we're attracting the right people to come and work here as well. It concerns me a little bit that I keep hearing there was this proposal, but we never heard anything about it. So I think these are the things we need to know so that we can talk about in the budget. Like it shouldn't, I don't know why we didn't hear exactly, but it depending on what the average is for the deputy chiefs, if we have taken care of the higher positions and then the line guys, there's no reason why we now shouldn't be taking care of the deputy chiefs, in my opinion. It was the same idea I think we had with police when Chief Ingram was sort of restructuring a bunch of things. And we sort of had to bite, we had to kind of, I don't want to say bite the bullet, but we had to eat a little bit of it for a little bit because we needed to make, it was a hard change, but we had to do it, right? It was like taking care of a big bill, even though it hurt a little bit, it's going to make its way. In addition to that, I don't think that HR should be the one that assigns the value of a position that they're not actually functioning in. So unless the HR, whoever makes these decisions, has been a police officer, firefighter, or wants to talk to council, I don't think they should be assigning the value of it. I think that's why we hire the people that we do. So we put these people in charge, Chief Frawley, Chief Ingram on the police side, and then we have to trust the information that they're giving us on where we need to be. That's how we receive our feedback, in my opinion, as far as budgets are concerned, it's staff, what should be paid, et cetera. So I would appreciate it very much if you guys would have this conversation and see how it can be done, and then bring that back and make sure that we're all on the same page without any resistance. I want to know how it can be done, and I want you to come back with a solution on how it can be done. Let me say that, at least for me. Because again, I think this is more important than some of the other things that maybe we're looking at budgeting on, even if we had to remove money from something else in the general fund somewhere else, like a lawnmower or whatever, to give it to the right place.
Counselor Doty, do you have another?
Sorry.
No, it's all
My
right.
fault.
So do you want to take a few minutes right now and get together and kind of discuss, or is there other stuff that kind of you want to go over before?
Well, here's the hard thing, I think, especially when talking about specific people's wages, is that, that's not gonna be done in an open meeting like this. That's the hard thing when you pinpoint. It's one thing to talk about COLA because it impacts all employees. It's different to talk about specific pay plan or specific employees that there's 3 of or 1 of. And so I think that's where the difficult part is in this open meeting, to say, hey, yes, this is agreed on or not. As to the previous discussion of building in a pay plan that we've already, that was something that the chief brought in a proposal, and we worked together with the mayor to institute longevity to try to increase those more, it was $12, I think, increase is what we already budgeted. And so this is now another $10.
So question, I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah.
Oh, just a question for the chief then. With the salary changes that you're talking about making, the stuff you're willing to give up, is that gonna make, is that gonna make the number?
No, yes, ma'am. No, our intent is to reduce operating budget components that were going to be IT-based. And we'll also look at overtime, because right now we've been expending additional overtime to increase services. We can curtail that. We've been great on our overtime from last week's budget session. We were at 31% remaining. So we have some ability to adjust there as well, and that'll get us to that point.
What about the shared position with the police you were talking about?
Well, the shared position would be one of those pieces where we could take that salary savings and keep that task within the fire department, within Chief Daniels' sphere.
Would the police then need to absorb your half of that cost?
That's a good question. I'd have to defer.
Yeah, so if we were to move that position out of fire and move it all the way to police, it wouldn't be salary savings in fire. It would essentially move that entire position to police is what it
Right.
would do.
So I guess here's my thing. I hate to say this, so don't get mad at me. But I do think that in this particular situation, I think probably you guys can agree with us, that it's important to take care of these deputy chiefs before we employ an accountant, right? Like, can we go another year with you guys doing your accounting? So that if we had to remove that position altogether, you guys would get your half back, you guys would get your half back, and whatever. I know, nobody's gonna talk to me anymore. But I just, you know what I'm saying, right? Somebody back there nod or something. Yeah.
We support the deputy chiefs, obviously getting what they deserve. I'd like to take a look at what that other half is and see if we can move some money around if we need to, because
Sure.
I think it was our county specialist position.
So there could be an option for you to keep it if you had to absorb the cost on it, giving them the ability then to take their half and put it towards the deputy chiefs, if that worked out. And then if you couldn't do that, maybe we could wait a year to do whatever we had to do to take care of these guys.
Yes, if I had a vote, I would say that.
Okay.
Hopefully we can take the money and put it toward the deputy chiefs.
Okay, so that's kind of where I sit, and maybe you'll need to get a gauge from the rest of the council, but until this is worked out, like where those things are fixed, because it sounds like he's got an idea of how to pay for it, then I'm
Which is fine, like, I totally get that. I think, when you're only looking at salary costs is one thing, but then you have the benefits included. And this is not gonna, I can't pull out these budget numbers. This
Yeah.
is something that's, this is something that I'm gonna have to bring up and finalize at the budget hearing.
right. But do benefits change if their salary goes up, or just their per se?
Everything changes, like, there's variable benefits for FICA, like, obviously, this position wouldn't necessarily have FICA, but there's 8.5% that we pay into the 401K, like, there's certain things, so it definitely adjusts.
Did you take that into
Yeah,
consideration?
but we can adjust to make sure that we get to a number that stays within the request that I'm asking for.
Perfect.
I want to, get to that number because this is the first stage or step of a multi-year plan. And taking this big of a bite now allows me to build the future of the organization. I know there's other holes that I need to fill, but I need to be affirmative and assertive on those.
And the only thing, I mean, with the overtime, I get, but I think that's a discussion, because within the negotiations yesterday, there was quite a few discussions, and so I think without talking to the union, I would be hesitant to change that dollar amount either, so.
Well, I mean, and I understand that. I think overtime's probably one of those hard things to predict, because it's kind of fluid and who knows type stuff. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are of the conversation to what's brought to council. And I think that if council is sort of unanimously, I think from my comments, and at least Councilor Williams, and you'd have to, again, talk to the rest of the group, but if council's sort of unanimously saying, or even a majority saying, we want to try to find a way to make this work, then we charge you with making it work one way or another, however that is. And it sounds like the police department's willing to help with that one part of it. So it sounds like it could be a really good conversation.
So just to clarify, you're wanting me to make it work while staying within the current budget, or you wanting me to make it work while increasing the dip into reserves?
Well, I want you to have the conversation. I don't think, you just said that while you were standing here that you couldn't really come up with the numbers until you sit down and have the conversation. So I will appreciate you guys having the conversation, and I think that it sounds like Chief Frawley has done some research to come up with the numbers, and then I guess you, as the finance director, would then see if those numbers worked, and then if not, then we would have to either, it would have to be figured out or brought back to council, or maybe there's a partial raise. I don't know.
And if I can interject, we can make it work within the budget. We don't have to get into reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's where that delicate balancing act, because it's just a finite pot of money, right? So if you take from here, you got to take away from over there, or you have to put more money into the pot. And so that's where I think those difficult things and kind of making sure, and the difference between, like, 'cause I know there's, like you mentioned about, instead of buying a mower, you can put in this. The tough thing is, a mower is a one-time expense. These are ongoing, so we have to look down the road too. If we add 20,000 in this year, it's going to be next year and the year after that and year after that. So you have to make sure you have that continual flow of money that's going to be able to offset that, rather than getting rid of a one-time expense in those regards. So it's a very delicate balancing act. I know Raylene has been orchestrating for many weeks now, many months now on that. And so, when changes like this occur, it's a trickle-down effect on that. So it does take time to look into that in that regards. But with that, we will go ahead and break for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I don't know if you two want to get together and talk about it and come back and discuss it some more, or if it's down the road further due to the complications in that regards. So we're going to take about a 5 to 10 minute break, and we'll be back about 5:20. There we go. Okay, so we are back after our break, and we are going to jump back in. I think there may have been some discussion, but it's probably going to take a bit more than that time allotted to kind of really figure out all the moving pieces to that proposal, so that may have to come back towards another date. Is that correct, Raylan? Summation on that? Okay. So with that, we'll just kind of continue on from where, I'm trying to remember where we were at prior to that.
Capital maintenance fund.
Capital maintenance, yep, okay.
So this is where the lease for Simplot Stadium is for the school, for CFI. The city contributes $12,000 to this that we transfer out of the capital fund. And then CFI contributes into this fund. And so we use this, in '24, we used it to help cover some of the increase in turf costs. And so that we kind of use it to help maintain Wolf Field and Simplot Stadium, so.
Mr. Mayor,
The,
is the land lease what CFI contributes?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And the 11,609, that's kind of been kind of the average of what we spend every year. It's not specific, it's only if we use it on repairs and maintenance out there. We have, under the Parks and Rec Fund, we do have a specific maintenance account for the Bluff Field, so this is more on long-term maintenance that kind of is not just routine maintenance. And this one, we hope the fund balance grows because we depleted it this year, so it's one of those ones that, to work on increasing, and try to increase with minimal expenditures to help with those long-term capital replacements at both of those fields, so.
Oh, Counselor Allgood, yes.
And this is a question for you, not Ray Lynn, I think, but there's been a lot of discussion and not with us, but between us and the county about who takes care of Gabbiola Field and do we have some foresight in that? What's going to happen in the future on Gabbiola?
Yes, we do. I appreciate that question. So I've been in recent communication with Diana Center, who is the county fair director. There had been some discussion, as you're probably aware, earlier this year about does the city potentially sell that property to the county. It was just kind of, there wasn't a formal decision, but kind of the consensus seemed no, the city wants to retain that ownership. So we're not moving in that direction anymore. Recently reached out to Diana Center and kind of talked about that with the fair coming up, and that we will be maintaining that. I met out on site with Daniel McDonald, our park superintendent, also brought Ken Wheeler, who works at the golf course but understands grass management very, very well, probably better than anybody at the city or even in the valley, to see what can we do to try to make this look a little bit better. It can look pretty shabby at times. It's been tough for Caldwell Event Center, for them to try to maintain it. They weren't sure, are we maintaining it as the county? So there was some confusion on that. So we were able to clear it up, and I let the county know that we will be maintaining it, taking care of that. And so looking at Ken's expertise on, the best way to get it up and looking good. So with the fair just occurring, we said, you go ahead and keep going with it. Once the fair's done, we'll probably take that over and move forward with it. We also have the rodeo coming up, and that does get utilized quite a bit by the cowboys that are coming in, especially the ropers. They have their horses out there in that area. And so we'll want to make sure that there's no extensive damage that occurs while they're out there, the sprinkler heads, things like that from the trailers coming in and out. So we'll be out there kind of trying to, rope off certain areas to keep them out where those sprinkler heads are at. Kind of, where do the horses go and the trailers on that. But yes, we are going to be taking that over, maintaining it, looking at, is it possible to get an autonomous mower out there? It's pretty uneven right now, so there'd have to be some leveling, things like that taking place. But I know one of the first things they do plan on doing, one of the issues right now is that, my understanding of being out there with Ken and Daniel, was all of the sprinklers are not like on a timer. So you literally have to manually turn them on, get them going, things of that nature. So their first task after the fair is over and everything And probably the rodeo is gonna go in and trenching in some, it's gonna be very simple because there's power out there already. They just need to trench it in, so they're gonna trench in some power to connect them all, set up a timer clock so they can get the sprinklers on a timer. So that should help significantly on the grass, maintaining it, not requiring significant hours of staff out there. And then just going out there, on a weekly basis, mowing it, keeping it down. But we will be doing that, and I have tasked Parks with looking into that, seeing what they can do to make sure they keep that under control.
And that was just part, the budget is part of the reason I was asking, because I've had a discussion with Juan about it a time or two, and I was thinking autonomous mower and budgeting for an autonomous mower and getting that stuff out there. I don't see that in any of our budgets. I mean, is that a thought? Are we gonna wait a year, or is there a plan for that?
So I think in meeting with Ken, he said that would probably be down the road to look at. He said right now, if you threw one out there, in his opinion, it's too bumpy, it's not smooth enough, it wouldn't be able to do the job, it'd be getting stuck. You'd be out there getting it unstuck more than if you're just out there mowing it. So he said for now, the best is just kind of maintain it and kind of see, do we bring in significant amount of fill to try to level that out? Or kind of on that, so we thought for now, let's just get it to where it's looking better, and then we can kind of assess it and see if it is to the point of leveling it, bringing in autonomous mower.
Okay.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
So next one is the police capital. Part of adding the positions back in for police is that to balance the budget, we did move the sanitation franchise fee out of police capital and into general fund under police to cover one of those positions. And so, because that is ongoing revenue, and so police capital will no longer have an ongoing revenue source. The $1 million that is in there is general fund transfer as part of the fund balance projects. So,
I believe that's for the police vehicles,
yes,
correct?
for police vehicles.
Can I ask,
Yes.
can I ask a question that's kind of unrelated but still related to police, so I can just sort of get it straight in my head? With the bond not passing for SROs, if it passes in November, like can you explain how this is working? Because they can't, we're still keeping them, right? They're just not in the schools?
Yeah, so, and the deputy chief could probably talk more to it, but as it pertains to the levy, so if the levy was to pass in November, the school district actually can't levy those funds until that next fiscal year. And so they wouldn't be able to collect any funds until that next school year.
But I guess what I'm asking then is, so in the meantime, their salaries are being paid,
So,
or we're just not hiring new ones?
so part of adding the positions is they will hold the 4 SRO positions vacant. And we're not removing the position, but we are removing the salaries from the budget.
But those officers are not being laid off or anything,
No.
right? Okay.
No,
So then,
they're being moved into,
other positions?
yeah.
Okay, so then if it passes and then whenever they recoup and it comes back around, then,
Then we would just add
They could-
the funding back to it, and then they would be part of
okay.
like the
But it's
budget.
not costing, is it costing us right now?
No,
Okay, so we're not going to see a savings when that comes back around?
yes. So, yeah, because we completely, for those 4 positions, we didn't remove them from the budget, but we did remove the salaries from the budget.
Okay,
So that next year, they're not having to request them as new positions. We just have to add the funding back in.
and then that funding would come from the
Yes.
school? Okay, thank you.
Next is golf fund, so we're kind of getting into the enterprise funds. With golf fund, these revenues are from when the previous golf pro, I haven't adjusted these from them. We made a little bit of adjustment, obviously, with reducing the golf manager. And then since Parks and Rec will be overseeing golf, I did put that position allocation back into here. I believe it's 20%. And so, but you will see with golf that they are projecting a surplus, which will be added to their fund balance because they do carry their own fund balance.
Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, so I half know the answer, I just like things on the record. So, the person that was the junior golf pro as of right today will become the golf manager, and we won't add any more position?
So from my understanding, we're not adding a new position in '25. So we have the golf pro, and then, what's? The assistant golf pro. So those two positions are still there. I know that the golf pro is out for hiring or
So
having
they've
interviews?
completed interviews in process of making a job offer to a new golf professional out at Purple Sage. So the assistant golf professional will stay in that role, and then hiring a new golf pro to replace the former golf pro that was out there.
And the golf pro will be the manager of the course as?
Yep.
Okay.
So next is water fund. This does include fee increases for projections. I know we haven't talked about those much, but those will be coming up right after the budget hearing, in another public hearing. But that's why you will see the significant increase in the water revenue. We also combine the funds. So water fund used to be two separate funds, water fund and then water capital fund. Those are now all one fund. And they do have some projects that are ongoing, and so that's where that, they're using some planned fund balance for the water fund. But with talking with the Public Works Director, the plan is to definitely increase the fund balance much more than that 5 million. We, in future years, we're definitely looking at upwards of 10 million to have for water fund in a fund balance. But that'll just take strategic fee increases over quite a few years.
Counselor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Really, we had an increase here this past year. So are we intended to increase the fees again, or?
Yeah, so, and I know Ashley can probably talk to some of the fees if she'd like, because I know that there's quite a few moving pieces.
Hopefully nothing to do with trash. Or maybe, huh?
Mayor, members of council, I don't get to decide on trash, but yes, we do have planned fee increases that we are planning to bring within the next month.
And when will that happen, Ashley? When will you bring that forward?
What was that? Could you repeat the question?
When will you bring that forward to the council as far as the increases are concerned?
Before the end of September?
Okay, all right. Will that include the light poles and all that stuff too, or just?
Yes, so that memo that has all of the Public Works fee and/or rate increases in it will be presented by the Public Works Director, and so it has everything in it with the exception of irrigation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I will just add that all of the city fees, so Public Works will do theirs, but I will also do all the rest of them, and so they'll kind of be all in, hopefully, 2 public hearings at the same time, so. Next, we have the wastewater fund. We also have quite a few projects that do have significant use of fund balance. It's really about timing of what wastewater can get done in the process, and so we kind of budget for them, and because they're all necessary projects, but if they don't get done that fiscal year, they're budgeted again that next fiscal year. So all of the projects are on the capital project list that I sent you for 2025. So if you have specific questions, let me know. But we are also, I'm working with the Public Works Director to make sure that 16 million seems like a lot of money for a wastewater fund, but it's not. And so we want to definitely make sure that that fund balance stays whole and that we have money for reserve if an emergency happens, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So Raylene, just to be clear, as far as the public too, these expenditures are required by either state or federal law, is that correct?
So, yeah, so I mean, it's to run all of our wastewater treatment plant and this, it's not necessarily to just increase sewer lines across the city. It's to run the plant and make sure, and with DEQ. So Ashley could definitely talk more to that if we have questions.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mayor, members of council, Councilor Static. Yes, all of those projected capital projects are required either at the wastewater treatment plant or within our collection system in order to keep up with development.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So then, sanitation fund, from we have the fees that I don't believe are increasing. I can't say that for sure, but I don't believe the recycle and trash fees are increasing. But we keep adding accounts because we keep building new homes, and so that's why you see that increase in revenue. That's what I'm projecting on. And so, you'll also, part of the 7 million is some contracts that you approved to go to the school districts, programs, about 130 of that is, so a lot of this is just to pay back the contract with Republic Services, so. But there is some admin in there, including compensating parks for mowing, because, parks gets trash, and so to help with that, and then part of the admin allocation, which pays for all of the finance, city clerk, HR, and all of that, all of those processes. So the electrical fund, which used to be called the streetlight fund, we are now moving personnel into that. We moved them from streets into the electrical fund, so they're their own department within there. And so part of that, you'll see the electrical services CAP, that is allocated. It's only half of the personnel. The other half is being funded directly out of here, because it's kind of backwards on how it was. We used to charge this fund to pay back the street funds. So now we're doing the opposite. And then the last fund is the irrigation fund. And so you can see there's a little bit of planned usage with one-time money for capital projects, but a lot of what irrigation, especially the increase, is not necessarily due to a significant increase, but new accounts coming on board. So that is, with all the separate funds, kind of where we're at, especially with cash balance and where those final budget numbers. Obviously, general fund will change with the discussions, but there's been, from our last discussion to now, there's, reconciling all of those changes that we made. Before we move on to the next, any questions?
Questions at this time? I do not see any. Okay.
And then I did provide everybody in the email what the actual list of approved positions are. So these are what are in the budget, what's approved. So you can see the addition of the training division chief for fire. You can see 1 sergeant and 2 police officers, community service officer and AA for police. On top of that, accounting specialist, which is for, well, it was originally for police and fire.
And then is there somewhere we can see that here?
I don't have it saved to where we can pull it up. I apologize. I sent it in the email, and I have a copy if anybody wants to see it. But I did not save it on the shared drive, so my apologies.
If I have it here, could I throw it on the shared drive real quick?
Yeah?
Let's see if I can do that. I might have to.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
So, Ray Lynn, I've got 2 of them here. Is this the old one? This is the new one?
That's, yeah.
So this is obsolete?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Debbie might have it too. Counselor Allgood, do you have another question where we try to pull that up?
Well, yeah, so in the budget that we've looked at tonight, all of this is included.
That is correct.
So when I look at this page here, general fund, and we have a general fund deficit of $547,000, right?
Yes,
That's not, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the numbers correctly. That's not enterprise funds or anything, that is just tax dollar funds.
that is correct.
And so, in addition to, because we have supplemented a number of different agencies with general fund money, and the interagency transfers.
Yes,
And so after making those interagency transfers to make all of these departments whole, we still have a deficit of 547,000?
yes.
That's what I'm struggling with right there, is we have injected one-time money into many of our funds. And these funds that we're speaking of specifically are tax revenue funds, and we're still $547 in the red. And so it's a bigger question than Councilor Williams' $60,000 not meeting the 30%. This is 547, what's the,
Well,
I can't live with that. We need to figure out, what's the plan there?
well, and I think $1 million of that is the transfer to police capital, which was supposed to be a fund balance project. And so, the plan would be that would not be ongoing, correct? And so, we wouldn't have that transfer next year. So, because I think that was calculated originally in the fiscal year '24 fund balance projects, but then we separated it out, $1 million in '24 and $1 million in '25.
So, and that's kind of what that question before. After the $1 million, this moved into capital fund, we still have a deficit, or the $1 million created the deficit?
The $1 million created the deficit. So, yes, because that deficit includes the $1 million.
Okay. That's not quite as bad as what I was imagining the first time. But it's still not great, but yeah, okay.
Counselor?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Raylan, part of this deficit, sorry for using the word blame, but part of it's because we're not being shored up by ARPA funds either anymore, are we?
That is correct. That's a significant part of the reduction in revenue this year.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm not quite sure how to ask the question, but let me just throw a couple things out there. We're down in sales tax as well, is that right?
Yes, so the sales tax projections did decrease this year, same way in '24. We get the projections every year from the state based off of in July, and so those, for this year and for '24, they adjusted them down.
Do you have an estimate of what that downward adjustment was?
I can get it. I have it in my-
Thank you. It's, I think, part of the puzzle, too.
It's close to $1 million. I think it's close to $1 million. $1 million less in tax revenue.
Our economic folks that get kicked in, we would have a revenue base like people had.
Not pizza.
I keep looking over there, if there's sitting there, we could go out and let myself into some other ones. I think through already.
says this here. Oh, okay. I thought you just wanted the general, so it's gonna be, it'll be long, but we can do that.
So in '24, what I budgeted was a total of $7,626,660. and $660. The revised budget for sales tax for '25 ended up being $6,667,972, so about $1 million. The revised budget, or the budget that we received, or the totals for '25 are $6,434,210.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, if I can follow up on this, we're talking about previously approved projects that are affecting this as well, like that $1 million transfer. And we spoke a little bit ago, it's been over an hour now, I guess, about the quiet zone project. That's reflected in this $1 million deficit as well, even though that's not spent yet, right?
That is correct. So in '24, we have budgeted 4.1. Nothing has been spent out of that, but then we reallocated 1.6 million to the rodeo. So that contract will be coming before you guys for a match. And so those expenditures will start occurring. Out of '25, what we have budgeted, when I talked to Rob, the Public Works Director, is $150,000 to help Bruce with this study.
Okay, so again, I'm slow, so slow it down for me. We originally allocated from there, how much? 4.5?
4.1.
4.1, and then we moved some of that to the rodeo, and that was
1.6 million.
So we're already down to 3.5? No, 2.5,
2.5.
right? And we know now from other conversations that the county has not agreed to participate with us in that project. So that takes us down even further. I think Councilor Doty's comments earlier are significant in light of the fact that this fund is getting to the point where the quiet zone, as much as I'm a fan of it and wanted it, is not going to be a reality. So if we took that off the table altogether, we have $2 million we could put back into the general fund on the column, which would more than make up the 1 million that we're seeing in our deficit. Is my math working correctly?
Yeah, that is one-time money, so yeah, it would go back to the reserves and fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Doty.
Just mine. So usually a pool is always operating in the red. I'm just curious, and I may have missed it, did you take a guess on how much the pool is going to make, even though it'll be in the red, but is it did you put that in the budget as well?
Yeah, so we included both the pool positions and the pool revenue.
Okay.
Based off of that, it's still gonna be in the red.
Sure, I think it always probably will be.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Councilor Allgood?
Yeah, I just want to speak to something, if you give me a couple minutes here.
Yep.
So, I've been visiting with Raylene, and she's been extremely helpful. But this is the priority to me. Whenever we set a budget in August, we set a new bar that we have to match. And last year, we set a really, really high bar. So when police and fire, I'm talking general fund here, I'm not talking enterprise funds, right? When police and fire get their property tax revenue money, police gets about 46%, fire gets about 26%. Am I accurate there, Raylene?
Yes.
And then the rest is split between library and streets and things like that. And so that number comes in, and this year, I believe police was right at 15 million. No, 13.6 million. And fire was at 8 million. And then they have additional revenues. Police have traffic tickets, liquor sales, that kind of thing, that build up their fund a little bit. But the point I'm getting at is, at the end of the day, that's all of the money that police and fire have in their budget. Anything else comes from we're adding $1 million to capital for cars. But I just want to make sure, we always want to do the best for our employees and give them the absolute best. But I want to make sure that we're staying in the budget, because next year, if we don't have $1 million to put in capital funds, that means the police have to make up for that somewhere else to continue their car program. And it's just very important to me as we're setting these steps, these bars, each budget year, because next year I want to be able to give pay raises. And next year I want to be able to buy police cars. And I don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're spending to our absolute limit and next year we're like, we're well below our 30%. We don't have one-time money to buy cars or whatever. And so, I'm not making any particular point other than I want to be careful because I don't want to come up one year with employees and say, well, we overspent, we can't meet. Every year we have to be a little bit in the black so we have room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. Any other discussion or questions for Rayland?
Any questions about the personnel list, I guess, before we move on
Yeah,
to the next one?
Counselor Elder?
Yeah, I just want, thank you, I appreciate, sorry about that. So going back to the $547,000 deficit,
Yeah.
is what Counselor Williams and Counselor Doty talked about, changing that project money, would that make us whole there without creating problems?
So that will add to the reserve, and that will make it to where the reserve is below or above the 30%. So our fund balance will be above the 30%, is what that will do. So that is correct. I mean, then the deficit is still going to occur. It's more like a planned use of fund balance is what it would be as. Because that $1 million is a planned use of fund balance, and that's, as long as that doesn't become ongoing, then yes, it would be just fine.
But if we did, as they're speaking of, our fund balance wouldn't go down like we're right now it would go down $1 million. If we move that money away from that project, our fund balance wouldn't decrease. That's basically?
It still would decrease, just because those are expenditures that would happen. So the budget as it sets now, those expenditures would happen. But, so it would decrease by that 546,000. But that 2 million's already in fund balance. So that's already in there. It's not going to get more, so,
Okay. It just frees it up.
yes.
Counselor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to Counselor Allgood's point, I think what he was saying, in essence, was we're still paying for police cars that the two chiefs before didn't pay for. But apart from that, if I could just get some clarity here, and Deputy Chief is here, and so is Captain Rosen and Lieutenant Wright, who probably knows more about cars than either of those two, but what would be a reasonable expectation for an ongoing expense for cars? Because this was an unusual planned contribution from contingency fund to kind of get us to a place where we needed to be for a lot of reasons, my joke notwithstanding. But what would you think, because we're not going to need $1 million every year is what I'm saying, right? I mean, it'd be nice if we could give that every year, but
Yeah.
that's not the reality.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, Member Williams, I think for us, it really is dependent on the growth of the city and the positions that we're going to request each year. So typically, what we've made a priority is making sure all of our police officers get a patrol car. So right now, the way we're looking at it, we're thinking about 5 officers a year, hopefully. And so that would mean 5 police vehicles a year. Obviously, if that's not going to work, there's other ways we can, leave cars here. There's other options. But if you told me, hey, what's your top wish for vehicles? It would be, like we said last year, for every patrol officer to have a patrol vehicle.
So forgive me, Chief, in round numbers, that's $500,000. Again, round numbers, but that's just,
That's about, so yeah, vehicle to outfit, patrol vehicle fully equipped is about $90,000 to $100,000 right now.
okay. Thank you, that helps.
Yeah, and I think one of the goals too with that is being able to go to a system such as what DC's talking about, is then you may hopefully be able to start to use some impact fee money on those. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, to use the impact fee, it has to have a life expectancy of 10 years. The police cars right now are not even close to that, because they're basically running almost 24/7.
And I think-
So with that, you could allow, again, the impact fees need to increase, but that could pay for some of that 500,000, could be from impact fees to pay for those. Would that be a fair assessment, or?
I think kind of what we're going towards is with the impact fees, like you said, it has to be a use, it has to be over 10 years. And right now, the current policy we're working on, we're going towards either 5 years or 100,000 miles before we replace a vehicle. So I don't think we're going to be able to use impact fees toward police vehicles. But our process and our thought process towards getting every patrol officer a patrol vehicle is that we would save money because they would take ownership of the vehicle. It would be theirs, and we wouldn't have to put it for maintenance as often as we do, and it would last longer.
Counselor Doty?
I would just say, yeah, and a better tracking software system, right? And then you would know exactly how many, I mean, not to say that it was a perfect world where I came from, but that's how we did it. You turned in your mileage every month, your maintenance every month. You could figure out which ones were your lemons and which ones were doing all right. And then you anticipate which ones are coming up. Usually, command staff level vehicles went to 10, some of them went to 10 years because they just weren't putting 100,000 miles, depending on how close that command staff member worked at their duty station as well. And it could be more than 5. Yes, with every officer, you need to plan a car if you're going to give each officer a car. However, don't forget there are lemons out there and there are crashes out there that while that's being debated in court, you have to plan for that too. So I think there are times where you do grab out of capital. I mean, you can't plan $1 million a year, but some years it may be they need $1 million worth of cars, and some years they may only need $200,000 worth of cars. But sometimes I think you do have to grab out of capital and help out. I mean, fire engine, I mean, those things are just extremely expensive to be able to budget for and plan for in a year, so just
Yep,
a thought.
good point. Counselor Allgood?
Yeah, so right now, disregarding the $1 million, what's the, how many cars a year do you need to rotate out to keep everything at your right mileage rate? Do you know?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Some cars every year are going to hit that 100,000. And right now, do you need to replace 6 cars a year? Do you need to replace 10 cars a year to keep those cars that are aging out?
Yeah,
Do you
so
know?
I guess we've been pretty lucky since I got here because we've got, I think, well, not lucky, but we probably have about 11 cars sitting right now, getting ready to be taken to the shop to be outfitted. So, and we've been pretty good at rotating cars in the last 2 years. So I'm thinking right now, when I look at our inventory list, we're looking at about three vehicles a year.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Anything else this time? Okay, I don't see anything. Thanks so much, DC, appreciate it.
Awesome. So if we're all done with this, if you'll bring back my PowerPoint.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor,
I think you're going to say the same thing. You can go that way.
Counselor Williams?
no, I just want to point out, the list was up there, 34 new positions this year, 50 last year, 84 new positions in 2 years. This is part of what I was trying to avoid. I realize some of them are arguably needed, but it's just an astronomical growth of government, and it's part of what gives me, it gives me pause in even considering this budget to add this many positions in there and to vote yes on a budget when I have a fundamental objection to this kind of government growth is difficult for me.
Yeah, so just kind of touch on that, just for a little bit of clarification. So with those positions, I think I'm looking at the spreadsheet, it does go to 34, but it begins at 2, so I think it's 33. And then a number of those are for the swimming pool. So those are seasonal, just for the summer, and I don't know the number, let me see, so we got 14 of them are for the swimming pool. So 14 of those would be just for the swimming pool that's gonna come on, hopefully, right, come online this next summer on that. So it still is, double digits on it, so, but a good number of those are for the not part-time, the seasonal positions for the swimming pool that we hope to open in May of next year. Okay, any other questions on the positions before we move on from that? Okay, excellent, thank you.
Okay. So, like I said, this budget does not include foregone. I tried to really balance it without foregone because there was a lot of conversations with that about not taking it. If we were to take it, the 290,000 would be the amount. So I just want to provide you with that amount so you're aware of it. If you guys decide to change your mind, let me know, we can add it back in.
So can I just touch on that real quick?
Yeah.
And this is just for information, because obviously the council can do what they want. So the original discussion with the foregone, to bring that in, has to do a lot with the House Bill 389, that I think pretty much everybody is familiar with, that limits cities' abilities to grow their budget. And again, growing your budget does increase your tax base on that, but it does put some restrictions and hindrances, especially on our police and our fire. I know that Raylene shared some numbers with me looking at if, for example, the city's taxes last year, when I got my tax, at least for me, when I got my property tax bill, and it shows each, entity and how much it went up or down. The city portion this last year went down. It was the highest by far. It was 15 or 16% decrease in the property tax. A big part of that was because of that House Bill 389 that restricts the city's ability for simplicity to increase taxes. Now, if we had been able to go above that, we still would have reduced our taxes. Last year, it would have been 15%, maybe it would have been 7 or 8%, but it allowed us the opportunity to hire more police officers, to hire more firefighters. And looking at the amounts from just last year alone, it was approximately $2 million that we could have used to, again, police, fire, those things, because this is property tax on that. So a lot of cities are using their foregone simply to make up for what House Bill 389 is hamstring them with not being able to hire more police, hire more firefighters, increase their wages on that. So that's what a lot of cities are doing with their foregone. Is, again, it's still capped at your 8%, so they can't take all of their foregone, but they're trying to use that to help offset the amounts that they can't use because of the 80% urban renewal cap and the 90% new construction annexation cap that House Bill 389 brought into play. And it's really tough because that's new. We talk a lot about new growth, right? Growth paying for growth. New construction, annexation, that is new growth. And now you cannot utilize all of that to help pay for the growth, because that's why a lot of our reasons why we hire new police officers, new firefighters, is because of growth. But now, because of that legislation, it kind of limits our ability to help have new growth, pay for new growth, because we can only use a portion of what that new growth is to try to hire new police and firefighters. So many cities are going to the direction of using the foregone to help offset that. So again, that would allow the ability to hire more police, hire more firefighters. And as we look down the road, we are going to be hiring a lot of new firefighters before too long with the new construction of Station 4. We're going to have to bring on a lot of firefighters at once. And so what does that do to our ability to be able to hire 12 new firefighters in 1 year, where we can only increase our budget by 8%? That's not near enough to hire that many firefighters at one time. So those are things we have to look into the future, 4 or 5 years down the road, to make sure we're going to have the bandwidth to hire all of those new positions, because that's the only place those can come from is property tax. in that regard. So those are just things that, come into play with, foregone. It is a difficult thing to go after, but a lot of cities are, simply because of the restrictions of House Bill 389 on them and the pinch they are feeling on their police and fire departments.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
And is it fair to say that this number you have up here for foregone isn't everything that is allowed by statute for us to take in foregone? It's what we would need to get us to that place where we were at our maximum. In other words, what I'm trying to say is there's more foregone that we haven't taken. But this number would put us at that nearly 8%, and so that's the most we could take anyway. And then I'll follow up if.
That is correct. So we have about $3 million in foregone, and so this would reduce that if we were to take it.
So that's kind of what I wanted on the record, so thank you for helping me out with that. We're not just grabbing for everything we would have taken had we taken it in the first place. And Mr. Mayor, it sounds as though you're saying 389 almost forces us to have to consider this. In fact, in listening to your comments, and even if we were to take the foregone and hire firefighters just to begin to plan for 5 years down the road, this might get us 2 firefighters, and it wouldn't be enough for 3 here. We'd have to do this every year for the next 5 years to get 10 firefighters. Am I far off on that number, Raylyn?
No, you're correct. I mean, essentially, unless it's like taking the 3% new construction, and we had a bump in new construction. Normally, our new construction's about 850,000. It's over $1 million this year. So whether that's an ongoing trend or not, I don't know. But with those amounts coming in, it only gives us so much in our budget capacity to add to our budget, so.
And then finally, just commentary, because I don't know what we're going to do, but if we did take this foregone to the tune of $290,000, I still believe our taxes would have gone down from what they were. The increment of this spread out over the city would not put us back to where we were previously in our property tax, so there still would be a reduction in tax even with taking this foregone, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think as counselors, we have to make sure that we understand the math behind HB 389, because right now, Mr. Moyle, he's considered the person that really gave everybody tax relief, but that was strictly temporary, and it's not true tax relief. It does stymie, cities hiring firemen and policemen, but nobody seems to mention that to the general public, and I just want the general public to understand that if it wasn't for HB 389 and they did follow some of the other recommendations that were brought to the legislature, we wouldn't be in this problem. So, and the quick way of getting rid of that is vote him out of office. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Allgood.
Just for transparency, I know the answer here, but when we take foregone revenue, when we take that additional money, it's a permanent increase. Is that correct? Would you just please explain
So there's
that?
2 options with foregone. You can take a 1%, which is permanent increase to your budget, and it's ongoing. That's to kind of your base budget. Or there's the 2% for capital. That one's only one time, so.
Which would this suggest?
This is the ongoing amount. This would add to our base budget.
That's, yeah. And again, I knew the answer. I just wanted transparency that this will be an ongoing thing. It would increase our base budget by $290,000 or more.
That is correct. And if we decided to do it, it's not just a budget hearing. If we decide to take foregone, it is a separate process that I have to follow. So it's separate steps as well, so.
Okay. Anything else on that? Councilor Stoddard, did you have anything else, or? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So the last thing I want to talk about is the COLA and the health insurance, because after working through the final numbers of the health insurance, I'm going to stand this way so I can see it. So I kind of put this together of what the city's currently paying and then what the employee rates are paying. So comparison of 24 to 25, and it's a pretty significant increase, as you can see. This is not the only option, but this is with reducing the COLA, this is what's budgeted, so a 3% increase in COLA, but this is the significant increase in health insurance by these, and that's because we have to cover the 9.5% increase in health insurance costs for our trust. So I gave you some stats on like the average and the total cost, but with this, as you can see, some of the ranges almost double, so pretty significant. Oops. There we go. So this is kind of talking about like what the COLA and what the increase would be, kind of the average. So this is 5 steps. I kind of took that data and looked at what the average COLA is at 3% and what the average health increase would be, or what the total health increase for the entire year would be. So you can kind of see the difference and compare it. Obviously, all of this includes fire union because we have fire negotiations, but whatever city premium we pay, we pay for fire union as well to their trust. So that gets passed along to them. So there's kind of a lot of nuances with this, but I did I did do a little comparison if we did 2%. So you can see with 2% what the premiums would, so a 2% COLA, because essentially I'm adjusting the COLA down to free up money in the city's budget to pay for health insurance. And what those premiums rate, it's still a significant increase. The difference is that the average gets a lot closer to what the total health increase would be for each employee. On top of that, like the way I look at it, 3% goes into Percy, it impacts all of that, where if we reduce that down, then they're not having that impact, so, and it's ongoing. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion, get your guys' feedback on which route you guys would prefer, I guess. We only have so much money in the budget. One of these is kind of how we have to move forward, so. Is that the, yeah.
And, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, Councilor Williams.
So again, what you're suggesting here is option A or option B,
That is correct.
okay? And you're suggesting that a 3% COLA would necessitate higher insurance premiums,
Either one is going to necessitate higher insurance premiums.
but the 2% COLA has the benefit of not increasing, help me understand, there's that financial offset there that makes,
So the 2% COLA, I don't recommend, and the reason I don't recommend it is because it really, say we give a COLA next year, then the employees, instead of having the 2% or 3% that we could have given with a higher premium, they only have 2%, yet they're still paying that higher premium, and it doesn't compound on that. So that's why I recommend the 3%, even though it is a higher premium. It balances either way. It's going to adjust either way. Either they're getting it taken out by paying the health insurance for the city employees, or they're getting it taken out by paying it in COLA, and then they can get it in overtime, and it kind of compounds that way. And I think that 3% benefits the employees more than the 2% does, but there's a level, right, where when you look at the average, obviously it does eat into the COLA cost.
but in the long run, the 3% compounds in a way that would make better sense, especially for employees that are long-term, have long longevity with us. And so that will take some explaining at every department level when people
Yes.
realize what's going on, so that they say, hey, my health cost has gone up quite a bit more and it's cutting into what my COLA was. But But your recommendation, and what I'm understanding you to say here, is the long-term benefit for them is to stay with the 3% proposal.
That would be my recommendation, but, I mean, the premiums do go down a little bit, but they still are going up significantly with the 2%, so.
I understand, thank you.
Counselor Doty?
And I would agree with that, and sometimes it's hard for newer employees to see that, but with the 3%, we also matching 401K, and we also have a larger PERSI contribution. So in the long run, adding more to your paycheck or to your raise is the goal, but some don't, like you said, it might take some explanation. Some would rather see the lower healthcare needs because they're not maybe using those as much right now as others. But in the long run, with their retirement benefits, the higher percentage going on your check is usually the best option, in my opinion. Yeah, sure, that's what you want.
Anything else on that? Okay, so it sounds like that option
Okay.
1 is the one preferred.
That is, I think, all I have, unless you guys have any other questions.
Other questions for Raylene? Okay, very good.
I just turned my light on late.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Are we
Counselor-
done? Are we almost ready to convene for the night, or is there like another packet I haven't seen?
Say that one more time, I'm
Are we
sorry.
ready to convene for the night, or is there another packet I haven't seen?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Did we want to discuss, kind of what Counselor Doty could kind of put out with those suggestions and kind of the thoughts on some of those
Wait, my
things?
light was on first.
Go ahead.
So, I know especially VRT is in here, and that's a big
Yes.
item, so we definitely do want to make sure we talk about that and any of the others as well. So I don't know if there's a preference to just kind of work down it, or start with the big and go from there, or anything.
Do you need me to stand up here?
I think you're okay, so. Counselor Doty, any
I don't
preference?
care which way we want to go. I did have VRT right up here up top because it seemed to create the most, not the most, but a lot of discussion, and I think we need a direction on it. I would still stand by with my initial recommendation, and so I don't know if you want to just go down the line or.
Might be best,
Like
just go down the line,
Counselor
because I know we'll hit it on that. So let's start with, I'll just kind of work our way down. So the first one was the mower, that was recommended to be removed, so that has been removed. If anybody doesn't want that put back in, then obviously we would need to make some adjustments in that regards, but that has been removed at Counselor Doty's suggestion. Does anybody want to put it back in? I'm guessing not, but good with that. The next one is, and there has been some discussion on this already, is that position, so this position does currently exist on that, and again, as I stated in there, it would obviously be a cost savings if it was eliminated on that, but it is one that is utilized in the mayor's office to assist. It's one that, it's a part-time position, so there is no benefits that get paid to it, so it is a cost savings in that regards compared to a full-time position. Did cut out the chief of staff request on that, so the hope is that we obviously didn't get that position, that we would not lose a position, and that this one could remain in the mayor's office at
Mr.
this time.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just some comments on this, though. I still think there's some clarification that needs to be done without mentioning any names. I once again got the accounting bill, so to speak, that comes from finance to us, and I still see people from, I guess that would be under your charge, according to the sheet we got today, that are still spending anywhere from $5 to $20 on something. It usually says information sharing. Sometimes it'll list a person's name. And I guess, what is our policy or what is our guideline? And I go back to the same thing. Can a guy from the streets that's working on a street having lunch, if someone asks him what street he's working on, does he get to spend $5 to $20 to share information? Or what's the line, or what's your policy, or what's the goal to limit, I guess it'd be local per diem, so to speak. I've never seen that in government, and so I'm just wondering, at a entry-level position. So I'm just wondering what the guidance is there.
Yeah, so those are obviously, would have to be business work-related. So like if, somebody in the street wanted to go out with somebody, they would have to pay it unless it was like some type of a work-related. So in regards to those, with the community outreach, they are, reaching out to different community members, and I'm not sure on the specifics. I could look at some of those to see if it's, the podcasts that they're doing, if they're meeting with, generally those are done in-house in there were some that recently were able to do that. Meeting with, if there's upcoming planning events or things of that nature that they're doing, that they're meeting at, whether it's a coffee shop, sounds like that's what some of those are in that regards. I know I did talk after last city council meeting, I did speak with our community outreach specialist to ensure, make sure that, anything you're doing, it must be city related, be aware of that. These things are obviously being watched. Make sure that you're using the taxpayer dollars appropriately in that regards, into which, he did state that, yes, it's always work-related, something in regards to whether it's a 4th of July event, if they're meeting to discuss, the upcoming, the parade or whatever that is, and they're meeting at a coffee shop, whatever it may be in that regards. But we can always take that, say, hey, instead of meeting there, why don't you just meet at the city hall to do those things to save those taxpayer dollars.
And I think that's my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, because we have city officers that are working their beats as well that often meet for special assignments they get from the chief or the deputy chief, right? And they shouldn't be charging to go have a cup, if that's where they want to meet and have a cup of coffee, that's by choice, right? If not, they have an office here or an office at the police station where they can meet that costs them nothing, so to speak. We can get into the weeds on if they pay taxes or not, but let's not go there today. But right, so it's a choice, and if we're gonna start cutting down the budget and look at things as to where we can cut, one, it needs to be fair, but two, we don't want one department head saying absolutely you cannot do that, and then another department head saying, oh, it's absolutely fine to do that, because then that creates a huge morale issue as to who can and who can't. And so I think that especially in your city per diem, daily per diem is not something that I've commonly seen in government. I'm not saying that others may have other experiences, but I just think that without any type of policy capturing that, there are plenty of other people that also promote our city or plan an event that just aren't in the planning department, so to speak. So I'd like to see a direction on that or cleaning that up a little bit for sure.
Yeah. So, thank you. Well, duly noted. Councilor Williams?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on the community outreach assistant, I guess I'm still a little fuzzy on what this person does. I'm assuming this person assists the community outreach individual who was supposed to assist you. We keep adding these assistants, and I would rather see your community outreach individual work more closely with you than add another individual at any cost, part-time or otherwise, to the budget that just continues to extend our adding of personnel and adding of positions, and maybe it's just not having a real understanding of all that your staff does, but there's just some concern that if we just keep, adding, will this assistant need an assistant next year? And I'm being ridiculous, I know, but where do we draw the line? And I thought this was an easy line to draw and continue to work more closely with your office, and it may cut into some of the other things you're able to do, but it would give you the opportunity to work on these things with them rather than this assistant that we're hiring.
Yeah, so this, like I said, this does currently exist. Caitlin is the individual who this position is. It's just, so the position is there, and so just continue it on. So what she does, as you mentioned, does assist. So she, helps with the podcast that the city does, which has been a great outreach for the city to bring in, people throughout the community come in and do these podcasts to reach out to new generations, the younger crowd. Caldwell is a very vibrant young city, so she helps with all of that. The 4th of July, she was out there assisting, setting up for the parade and for at the fireworks and all of those things. And so all of these different items, part-time position, so it's not a full-time that she works in that regards. And so those are a lot of the things that she does help and assist with. So this would just allow that to continue on and to have that support within that department.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So just a follow-up then, if she's already being paid out of somewhere out of your budget, I'm guessing, or a split, I think I saw, right? That's the point. Why, this would add an additional $24,000 to the budget, right?
It is not.
If we take it, okay, so I
Can
think
you help
I
maybe-
think that's some of the confusion is if we're already paying for it, why do we need to add it? It's,
So there should be no addition to it if I'm not correct.
So there is a little bit of an additional, and the reason why is currently she's being paid split between half mayor, half police. That's currently for fiscal year '24, how she's being paid. So there would be an addition in the mayor's budget, but a decrease in the police's budget.
guessing 12,000, is that, was it split evenly? I don't know.
Yes, currently it's split evenly,
So we would raise the budget by $12,000, so to speak.
Yes.
All right.
Well, because it's already being paid out of both, so we're just moving it from one.
Right, but you're not going to
one.
grab the 12,000 from police and switch it to the mayor's budget, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So the 12,000's got to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
I have something to say.
Yes, Councilor Register.
Regardless of the cost of it, I agree with Councilor Williams. I feel like we do a lot of consultations, which I think you got me the numbers on at one point, but we hire a lot of consults and a lot of assistants. So I just want to make sure that it's something that's absolutely needed. And if the two primary jobs are the podcast and like community events like the parade or whatever, I just don't know if it's a needed position when we already have a community outreach person and we use Mayor's Youth quite a bit for those types of things. So I don't want to say it's just $12,000 and say, well, we'll just keep it if we're already having an issue with being over. So if this is not approved, then does she lose her job or is she already leaving, or how does that work?
So she would lose her job on that, and she does a lot more than just those two things. I wish that her or Brian were here to explain everything that she does and entails on that, so.
I guess,
oh, go ahead.
well, because I'm a little bit confused about what Brian does. That's what kind of why I asked for that organizational chart, because I just want to be clear, like, that we have it right. So Joanna's your assistant along with, I'm assuming she helps does she help other departments or just?
No, she's strictly in the
Okay.
mayor's office.
So she's your assistant and then Brian does what?
So the community outreach specialist, so he does, anything within the community, from the community outreach events that we do, the 4th of July, he's actively involved with Destination Caldwell, also helps with the new employees when we recognize them or kind of, put their picture out. Have you seen the new employees? So he does a lot of that, works a lot with Char, our public information officer. So there's a long list of things that he does and helps and assists with, and anything community outreach involved. And like I said, that's been a big thing, is trying to reach out to the community more, trying to get them more involved. I know, we got our wonderful Bianca here who does that a lot for the fire department. And I know she stays extremely busy on that and helping with them. And so Brian is kind of that for the entire city and just working a lot, I'm sure, with Bianca as well, in that regards. And so it is a busy job. He stays very busy. A lot of those events like the 4th of July, that takes months to plan.
Yeah.
And
So this
putting that
position
on.
is his assistant.
So,
right?
yes, assist in that.
So do you have an assistant, Bianca? Okay. So I'm just trying to figure it out. Not that I think that it's a ton of money. I'm just trying to figure out need versus want. So I'm not really sure yet
Yep.
how I feel.
And it's obviously the council's decision. I definitely feel it's a need and fight for it. And I love Bianca and everything. But you gotta remember, this is for the entire city, not just for one department on that regard. So, but again, it is the council's prerogative and decision on how to move forward with it.
Is there another part-time position that can be rolled into? I mean, there's nobody else, there's not another position that can help Brian?
There's not, so.
The only thing that I could suggest maybe, like to stay budget neutral is, and I hate to do it, but is to reduce, currently HR hires interns, is to reduce that budget, to make it budget neutral. So,
Do we pay the interns that come into HR?
no, the HR intern budget is for all of citywide, so any interns citywide. It's, I believe, $38,000 a year. And so we could reduce that to cover this position.
Which would
Make
be
it budget
reducing
neutral.
it by $12,000, right?
Yeah, just the 12,000, yeah.
I think that wouldn't be a bad, compromise for something. I mean, I hate to see her lose her job. I just want to make sure that we're justifying expenses and I mean, obviously, this is gonna be another discussion, but if we're losing money on parking meters and we're having some trouble meeting wherever we need to be, maybe those are the kinds of solutions that are really interesting that could help.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think you're scratching where it itches, Ray Lynn, and I think the question is, and you say it's the council's decision, and you're right, it is, but it's also your decision, because there are probably areas in your budget you could say, you know what, I will fight so hard for this assistant to my assistant that I'm willing to give up 5% of my travel budget, or some other part of your own budget that you'd be willing to say, we could find some equity in the budget to do this. And so I would continue to argue that we can't just keep adding. And at some point, we have to say, where are the savings so that we can have these essential positions, or at least what we're deeming to be essential. And so I think that's the path we need to go down. If we're going to keep this position in, where are we going to get the 12,000 from?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I know after your suggestion, so we did go in and reduce our travel budget by nearly 10%. So if you're able to allocate the money that we're saving in that and put it towards this, then that's obviously going to reduce the cost even more on that. So we did not move it over here, we just completely cut it out. So we could definitely look at that, because like I said, we did, for mine and the mayor's office, it was a near 10, just under 10% reduction after your suggestion at the last council meeting, so.
And I forgot to mention, so the mayor and I discussed it, and we did reduce all travel budgets by 5%.
So is that something then how do we do this? If we all agree that we would reduce the intern budget through HR to pay for this position, like how do you need a head nod? Like how does it work to put
I
it?
feel that there's good direction to do that, so I can just go in and do that
And that would just be reflected in the final budget
in the
that's
final
presented.
budget.
Okay, any other discussion on that item? The next one should go a little quicker until we get to BRT. So, okay, so the next ones I think are very easy. The safety position, as discussed, we'd already eliminated that one. The director of billing facilities eliminated. The PR admin assistant, so this is, I always think public, but it's Parks and Rec admin assistant that have been proposed. So the proposal here is to eliminate that position, but replace it with a crew member, kind of the boots on the ground. I think that was discussed earlier today, getting more people that are out there working, especially with our Parks and Rec department, our parks, to make sure that they're adequate and staying up to what's expected from the council, from the community, to make sure the parks look good. And all of those things. So that's the proposal, is adjusting that to be a crew member, and then some of that money would be pulled from the contracts portion of the budget, because there's, again, contracts came up that are used to do some of those work when there's not sufficient staff. So you would have some cost savings there, not the full amount or even close to it, but you would have some cost savings. So the proposal is to keep that position, but adjusting it to a crew member rather than a Parks and Rec administrative assistant. So, anything additional on that, Ray Lynn, or does that cover it pretty good? So discussion on that, any thoughts or direction on?
No, I'd like to see more people on the ground, so.
Okay.
And more assistance to
Councilor,
assistants.
sorry.
Ray Lynn, I'm sorry, do you know what the net savings is with this change? Were you able to foresee that question? Maybe not.
No, I didn't, but I can pull up while we're looking, so.
Okay, because I do think the goal of some of these recommendations is we can be more fiscally responsible, and we are in the middle of working towards a new Director of Parks and Rec, and I think having an administrator in-house hired, once that is done, who can analyze and determine best where we need the boots. I almost would rather wait and let our new director come in and tell us where positions are essential, and this is just another example of maybe we get the cart before the horse.
Yeah, and that's always a possibility. You could come back with, obviously, budget amendments. We try to limit them, but you could always come back. So if that was council's feel, is rather having a director in place before, let them have time to assess. I'm guessing it would take them at least a few months, so it would probably be a mid-year potential budget amendment to come in with this position at that time. That could be something for seeing. Yes, Ray Lynn?
So the Parks and Rec maintenance specialist the cost of it is $87,400. So it's actually an increase, but I did reduce the labor services, which is where we pay temp service, by $30,000. So it would be a net decrease of 10,000.
Mr. Mayor, do we know, since the previous director is not here anymore, do we know the need for this? Like, are they short of?
I mean, from my understanding, yes, they have been short, they pay, they use all of their labor services, they hire, and then with taking on the lights, I think this position would help significantly.
Did you say they were hiring temp workers?
That is correct, through
Okay.
temp agencies.
Because in theory, I agree with Councilor Williams, where when we bring a new director in, that they should be able to then shape their department, but I guess my concern is if they're short and then we don't do this now, are we leaving them in a lurch with the lights coming up and all that kind of stuff, or do we wait?
And one other thing too to throw in, so this budget does not become effective till October 1st. So that's another thing that I didn't think of is if it is approved, this person is going to be hired next month. So it still would allow, because we obviously hope to have a director hired sometime in the next month. So it would allow that person to come in, get their feet wet, kind of see, and then if they felt that position is allotted, but it doesn't mean it has to be. If they felt it needed to go somewhere else within the department, they could ask for that variance, but at least that money is there ready for them to utilize. So it does allow them, again, it doesn't have to even be filled October 1st. They could be filled in December or next year, whenever that was appropriate.
That is correct, yeah, we can always, we've done this a lot of different times where if that position is not exactly what they need, that job class, we would reclass it and see about trying to stay within budget. If we're not, then, coming to city council, but at least having that position allows us to do that and reclass it to a different type if needed, so.
Councilor Williams, did you have?
Thank you. Yeah, $50,000 even is a lot of money to go towards temporary help, because we're not paying the benefits on that as well. And so there's more to be said, just if we need them for hanging lights and we can pay them during the season, there's some real savings in not having to pay Percy and our health care and the rest of it.
Do you have additional?
I guess the only other question I had is when it comes to the lights, the previous director made it sound like it was strictly going to be Parks and Rec, and if she had to go out there and climb a ladder, she was going to do it. Are they not getting help from anywhere else, like street department or anything like that? It really is just going to be the Parks and Rec people?
It's anybody and everybody that needs to be out there to get it done. It's very similar to, I'd say, our chip seal program. Chip seal, it is not just street department. There is a wastewater treatment department, individuals out there. I think even Parks and Rec, there's a few of them. So everybody chips in. Yes, I caught that for a second there too. So it's all hands on deck. So it'd be kind of similar on this, where Parks and Rec would be leading the charge, but doesn't mean that street wouldn't, throw in a few people, maybe even waste whatever it needs to get it done. In that regard, it's just who is leading that. It would be from Parks and Rec, and then fill in as we need on that, whoever's available to come and help out.
So essentially, if we hired this person now, it's not like they make it or break it, but to your point, to Councilor Williams, to what he was saying, but then we get a new director who's going to want to fill this spot next year, and we're not budgeted for it this year, so it sounds, I don't know. I'm sort of I'm kind of on both sides on this one.
Yeah, and like I said, there's good arguments on both sides, I feel, on that one. So any thoughts, direction?
Mr. Mayor?
Now, and, sorry, Councilor Doty, real quick, always remember, you can always, and this isn't the final, but you can always lower the budget, right? You cannot increase it. So if you say, no, we don't want this in there, and it goes published, you can't come back and say, no, we want to add it in. But if it goes published, you can always take it out at that last budget hearing.
That is correct, so it'll be published probably by the end of this week and
Okay.
to city council.
Yeah, so, sorry, just want to throw that in. Yeah, Councilor Doty, sorry to cut you off on that.
I'm good either way. We can either put it in and reduce it later if that suffices the council. It does look like there are 3 on this list though, right?
Is that correct?
So
Raymond?
that would
Yes,
just
so the-
reduce that, so they would still be getting 2. And so I just want to make sure council knows that when making their decision on this position. They would still be getting 2 new positions if those don't get removed as well.
Okay. Any other discussion, thoughts on that?
Question.
Yeah.
So does this position, so I didn't realize there were going to be, I don't have my printout in front of me, so if there's 3 of those positions and only 2 gets hired, then can that other position go towards, like what Fire was talking about, since they're all in the same general fund, right?
So this is in the Parks and Rec Fund. And so Parks and Rec receives minimal property tax, most of it's sales tax of what it's funded from, so.
So no, I can't.
Yeah, because police and fire don't receive sales tax, it's all part of the general fund, but it's not in their department specifically.
Okay, so it couldn't go to pay the other half of that accounting position if Fire gives that up?
If we move the accounting position to this fund, yes, we could do that.
Okay.
Okay, so leave it in and just potential to remove it later, is that?
What's the other side want? I'm
Oh.
totally fine with that, yeah, leave it in, but,
Like a marinate for a little while?
yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next one, VRT. So this one, we did leave it in at full because there was some that were very much wanting to either to reduce it to the others, but some others that had discussion of wanting to leave it in. So we thought, let's just leave it, and then obviously it's up to council on, because obviously it's easier to come down than go up. So we left it in there at the whole amount, and then for council's discussion and kind of direction on, does it stay at the full amount? Does it get reduced to the 345? Does it go somewhere else? So that it's totally council's prerogative on that. So, Councilor Doty.
345. Just like the price is right.
Just do.
We have a bid, 345. Councilor Sadek.
Yeah, when you look at the amount that we give, or we donate to this organization, compared to other cities, we're subsidizing a lot of the other cities. And I know after talking to even the Napa councilmen, they're not satisfied either with the service. And when you look at the percentage of people from our community that use the service, that even compounds the problem where it should stay at 345 because there's just not that many that use the service. So I think we should leave it at 345. Thank you.
Councilor Rich.
I think we should leave it at 345.
Councilor Williams.
345.
Councilor Allgood and Councilor Dittenberg. Would you?
I'm obviously in the minority, but I would include the other route, and the reason I would include the other route is twofold. It's the only route that serves specifically Caldwell residents, and that's important to me, that the other routes go to Napa, they go to Boise, which are wonderful. This route specifically serves Caldwell people. The second thing is, we talk about whether it pencils or not. Well, we're spending $6 million on a swimming pool that makes $70,000 a year. That does not pencil in any realm. We add money to O'Connor Fieldhouse every year. It does not pencil in any realm. The route that we're eliminating, if it was a route that went somewhere else, I would be fine with saying no. But the fact that it serves Caldwell people, I would support it just for that reason.
Councilor Dittenberg.
So I agree with everything Councilor Allgood says, and I'm going to ask the council to keep it in the budget, and if it comes to a point where we don't get the route because we don't vote on a contract like we did this last year, at least it's in the budget, and if we change our mind somewhere along the lines, we can at least jump on the opportunity. But one of the things that's important to note about this is if you look at the total street fund budget where this comes from with $25 million, this additional $142,000 is 0.6%. That's pretty small amount. I mean, that's a really small amount. And even if you were to say, yeah, we're going to not put it in the budget or whatever, it can't go for police, it can't go for fire. It's strictly something that's paid out of the street fund, and it just gets put right back into the fund balance. And I think it's, we can easily say, well, we don't have the hard data on people who would use the swimming pool because the swimming pool's been closed for so long. So again, I think we create this route, specifically a Caldwell route that serves Caldwell residents only, and I think it'll do good. So I'm asking the council to keep it in the budget, and if you decide not to sign a contract down the road, at least it's in the budget.
Thoughts on that from council? Councilor
Well,
Cody?
it's not apples to apples, though. I think the swimming pool will serve many, many more people in the 3 months that it's open than the bus, so it's all depends on what your passion is and what your need is. If the 345 and they want to cancel one of the larger routes and switch that to the city route and have one long route and one city route, I'm fine with that. I just think it can get accomplished with the 345. We can certainly talk to them and say, switch to we want a local route and not too long route, so I think we can still get there with that amount of money.
Any other discussion, or Councilor Williams?
And I think rather than misleading VRT, because in light of our recent misunderstanding, if I could just characterize it as that, they'll come back to us the first council meeting in October and ask us to sign that agreement, and we'll be having the same discussion. So I think it's almost better for us to make the decision today.
I see head nods down this way. Is that accurate? Yep, me too. So, okay, so then with that direction then, because I know the request is they just keep it in there as a potential, and that sounds like, no, don't want to go that direction. I'm seeing, okay. Duly noted on that. So that moves us into the fire dog, and that has been eliminated from the budget on that regards. I don't know if there's any discussion on that from any council. I think we're all good there. And then we'll do all of these real quick. So the positions, golf manager, chief of staff, HR specialist, senior, and the strategic plan, all are not included in the budget, any of those. And then the next one is the community outreach, and this is where we really do need some of your input. So the proposal was reducing it from 126,000 to the 64,500. And so discussion on that, and then if you agree on that amount, what is your direction for? And we do have, I think, some of the info of what was given out last year. I know Advocates Against Family Violence is requesting $15,000 on that. So where of that, if that is 64.5, whatever number you do come up with, I think 64.5 is what's in the budget, correct? And then where do you want that, how do you want that allocated, and do you want that increased? So Councilor Doty.
Well, you're spot on with what I was wondering. Is the 64.5 what's currently in the budget? It sounds like it is. I think I'll pass the torch to Councilor Stoddard, because I think he has a point about the Veterans Hall, right? Because that's quite a significant.
Yeah, Councilman Williams kind of hit the nail on the head here a couple of weeks or a month ago. What do we get in return for some of these donations? And I think, Hope House, if we had to supply that, we meaning sharing that with the county, we'd have to supply something. It'd be well over what they're asking. So I think that's justified. Same with the Veterans Group, the 20,000, and I think Raylene and I disagreed. I think she had 15, but I said 20. Again, last figures we had, and this was from federal government figures and the state, this is back in 2016, the amount of revenues that they brought actually into the county in Caldwell was 84 million. So if you look at the 20,000 compared to the 84 million, I mean, it's a lot of money. And that's including they're paying rent, they pay interest, services rendered by doctors and everything else, because not everybody goes to the Boise Veterans Service. So again, if you look at that 84 million compared to the 20,000 they're looking for, I just can't see how you cannot justify that with what they need. So, and like I say, we're a lot different than the Pocatello outfit. We're open 5 days a week. They're open just on phone calls, and we have in-house services. Again, if they weren't provided, you can talk to any of the commissioners on the county, and they'd say, well, gosh, we're going to have to do something to make up for that and supply the services, and that would be a heck of a lot more expensive than the $20,000. So that's my speech. Thank you.
Councilor Register?
Well, I want to be clear. Are you asking for part of the money to go to veterans or all of it?
20,000.
20,000, okay.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that we do a really good job of our donations and helping facilities, but I also think we need to look at some other options as well. And so one thing that Raylan and I had talked to you about before was our own victim witness coordinator having her access to money for crime victims in Caldwell over the weekend, after hours, getting them a hotel, food, etc. Do you know what they get, and where does it come from, this money, or does it that come from another place?
It is budgeted in the police budget, and I do think that going forward, like having a P card will really help her to allow those purchases a little bit easier than the way she's had it now.
So I guess what I'd like to see is to make sure that she has some sort of suggestion on how much money she thinks she needs. So if the problem was just not having access to it before, maybe what we're giving her is fine. If not, how that works, or if this even plays into what we're talking about right now. But other community type things, I agree about the veterans. I would rather increase their money than a Hope House again, or a Hope Store, or what's it called?
I'd rather increase it than take away from the other ones as well. I think the mayor's outlined different monies to different ones.
I think we need to look at that better. Like, maybe that could come out in an email or whatever. I wasn't really prepared for this question, I apologize. But I would like to increase for the veterans, and maybe if we can keep the donations the same, but we can't always increase by $5,000, $10,000 to nonprofits. And I think we kind of need to look at our own, which includes maybe our seniors with Meals on Wheels. I don't exactly understand the relationship that the city has with the animal shelter, but I know there's been some struggles, and I think county pays for that, and then we give some money. I don't know, and again, I don't know if this money is appropriate for that, or if there's a way to donate a little bit to help with some of that care. I don't know.
So a couple of things. In regards to the animal shelter, we have a contract with them already, I set up a 3-year contract with them. Last year was the first year, and it increases by 5% every year that we have with them. If I recall, it's about $65,000, but it's increased from there for fiscal year '25. It's about $68,000.
So is this money that we're talking about right now appropriate for, like, and this would be a future question, not for this budget, but is it appropriate for other community groups to come, like a rescue, let's say, and say, could we get so much? Because I know people come to the meetings and ask us for commitments or money or whatever. Is that this fund that we're talking about?
Yes, so we have like Hope Store, Veterans, Metro, which asks for $15,000. So they drive around the seniors around the area. The seniors farmers market, that's another one. So
What might be helpful is if our budget right now is that 65,000 number,
yeah, 64,500.
and the proposal was to double that? Or,
I mean, it's up to you guys on what number you would like in here.
okay, so let's say we stay at the 65,000 number. Could you send out an email to us, and I'm sure it's in a packet somewhere and I'm just missing it, but just where that money's going to right now, and then maybe we can email you back with the suggestions of if we were to commit 20,000 to veterans, like maybe where we'd like to see the rest, and then you could just take the majority. I don't know how that works.
I mean, if I email you where it is, if you can tell me, just reply back to just me and just tell me where would you like to allocate the money, and then I can kind of see what the majority is and put it there.
Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to see the veterans get more money, and then I would like to see, again, I'm not exactly sure where that money is going, I mean, with the exception of the people that have come to the meetings, but I would like to look at some of our seniors with Meals on Wheels, maybe something with I don't know if we can do anything with the shelter or not, but if there is some option or something like that, but that's where.
Okay.
Yeah.
Counselor Stoddick, did you
Yeah,
have
we
a-
just want to remind everybody, Mr. Mayor, that the county is appropriating $36,500 to the Veterans Hall. I wish we could match that, but, under the circumstances, we have to be real with this budget too, but that's what they're allocating for it. Thank you.
Why didn't you ask for 30,000 and then take the other 35 to spread it around?
Because I don't think it would have flown here before the council.
Okay, well, I'm going to propose that we give 30,000 to the veterans and then take the other 35 to spread around.
Any other, Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In one sense, everything the city spends money on is community outreach. Everything we do is for the community. We're not selling a service. And so it's interesting to me that we're spending so much time on this. We have a budget year where we still have a deficit, where our contingency fund is going down, where sales tax is off by $1 million. We might not be able to give away extra money as much as we would like to even great organizations. So I think the proposal here to leave it at $64,500 and later on determine how we're spending that is where we need to be.
Very good, thank you so much. Councilor Starkey, did you have another?
Yeah, again, Councilor Williams, your statement about what they return to the community, when you look at the Veterans Group and the Hope House, they return a lot of money to the community because the county and/or cities don't have to supply those kind of services, which would be much more than what we would be giving them. And I think you have to take that in consideration. And with the reduction in the VRT, I think there is money there, for that 30,000 and the 15,000, my opinion.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Councilor Allgood?
I just don't want to be the one that comes and tells Meals on Wheels or Hope Store that we cut their money. You know what I mean? Because those are all wonderful organizations, and I want to make sure we support all of those people. They all do a great service to our community. So if we're going to cut somebody and benefit for another, I don't want to be the one that tells Meals on Wheels we're cutting their money, is what I'm saying, because they're wonderful organizations, and I just want to make sure. One of the thoughts I had was, we've got $100,000 for graffiti removal. I don't know if that's every year, but that is a ton of graffiti removal. I mean, you could cut that in half and use $50,000 for these projects that we're discussing and still remove all the graffiti in Caldwell.
I think that's a good idea.
Could we get a figure on that? How much does it cost to remove graffiti right now? That's how I came up with 100,000. So I'm curious as to how much, we're already well over what we budgeted to remove graffiti.
So right now, we have an RFQ out, but based off of the current ones, it's $350 an hour.
Paying an outside person to do it? Mm-hmm. We're paying $350 an hour?
Yeah, that's, I believe, or was it incident? It's $350 an incident, sorry. $350 an incident. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that not something the city can take care of? Like that we, I know, like the city, yeah.
It's special, I think the RFP that I read, it's for special equipment. You have to be able to get up high, and it's not just someone with a paint bucket and a brush, right? It's professionally removed, and then there's also a substance that they can apply if they go back there numerous times to prevent graffiti from being on there. So it's a little bit more complicated than just, I would all do it for $350. The equipment requirement on that RFP is hundreds of thousands of dollars for you to have in your possession.
Yeah, and that is one that obviously we don't know what that number will be ultimately, so we didn't want to be low.
Sure.
So we do hope it is high and there is surplus on that. This is just to allow us to kind of fill it out, see where it is. Hopefully it does come in below. And if it does, then maybe some of that money could be reallocated to some of these organizations or funds at that time.
But I'm willing to lower it. Sorry, Diana, I didn't see your mic. I would be willing to lower it though, because Hope Store is great. And I don't think Meals on Wheels, unless Raylan had mentioned it, but normally they're pretty well funded and covered. But if we're doing it, sure, they're all good benefits. So if it takes requiring to reduce that, but I think you'll see a significant increase of graffiti removal costs if this RFP is approved and done, so.
Do you know what we gave to the veterans in the last budget?
$20,000.
Oh, so you want to stay the same?
No, I'm gonna raise it to 30.
To 30. Okay, so if it were raised to 30, then could we reduce the graffiti by 10,000 to make that difference, or something like that,
Yeah, I can do that.
So that way maybe nobody else is affected, the other programs. I guess what I'm curious also about is in that email that you send out, can you tell us what we donated in years past, going back a few years? Because I do feel like there was 1 year, maybe it was last year, where we jumped quite a bit, like we did a lot more than we had done before that. Maybe when we had more money, I don't know. So maybe we're caught up this year and we just do our regular donation and then next year increase it. I don't know exactly what the options are, but if that's one way to work that out and maybe take a little bit from there.
Okay, very good. So I think that's good direction. So we'll kind of put something together, send out some emails, get some feedback on that, and see where everybody is at in that regards. And then last thing on the sheet that I see is the intersection of Linden and Cleveland. So the proposal is to remove that. So what this is not for the construction of it. It'll be much more expensive than the 300,000. But this is to begin the study to have it built on that. And I know there were some questions about, is this simply because of the amphitheater that may be going in nearby? We discussed that with our Public Works Director, our city engineer, and it is already a safety issue in and of itself right now. So this is the intersection there at McDonald's, Starbucks. The big issue that started to create is when Starbucks went in, and then not Jimmy John's, the sandwich shop. Jersey Mike's, there we go, Jersey Mike's. And so you're starting to see a tremendous amount of increase in traffic in that. So it was decided regardless of the amphitheater going in or not there, it is a safety issue that they do want to address. So the proposal is to leave that in there. And again, this is just to get the study started. It still wouldn't get constructed till 2028, 2029. So if we do push it off another year for the study, obviously that delays that even more. And by 2028, I don't even want to think what that intersection is going to be like in 4 years from now. So that was the reason to propose to have it stayed in. Councilor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, there were several in there besides this one, and I think I mentioned last if we'd had a discussion, but we haven't had a discussion since the last budget meeting. So I think there is an area in there if savings need to be made. I don't know how many intersections and things we had seen on that list, but it's another area where we could look to see. It's clearly not the ones that are a safety issue, but there are many, 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 and we didn't discuss all of the intersections that are on that list. So maybe look in those areas to see which one could be moved down the road.
Yeah. Councilor Olga, did you have a?
Oh, sorry.
And this would obviously not affect them, correct me if I'm wrong, the property tax budget. This is coming from the street department budget, correct?
That is correct. So it is coming from the street department. And just as a note, because I have significantly already reduced street budget's property tax to cover, and so I would be hesitant to reduce it anymore or move funds from it, because it is less than fiscal year '24, which then could impact future years as well.
Perfect. I
So-
like to hear that you reduced it, so I think that was my goal. So thank you.
Perfect. Okay, anything else? Any other items, discussion to bring up? I know we covered the graffiti, it sounds like, so we'll look into that.
There's a couple more on the last page.
Oh, is there another? Oh, sorry, I didn't go to the next page. So, the maintenance, building maintenance position, so proposal for that, for another position there. So there are 2 new positions being proposed within the maintenance on that, so the thought was to not add a third one, just continue with the 2. But again, council's prerogative on if you want to add additional one. We already talked about the graffiti on that, and then the last one, just with the space behind us, that was going to be gym, so we have cut out the gym equipment on that, but would like to leave it how it is now rather than converting it into office space. We have been able to move several individuals over to this building from 621. I was able to confirm with Ashley and Rob that are over there that there is no issues in regards to mold, things of that nature. Ashley's crew is all over there. There's not enough space to move them if we were to move them over here, it'd be half and half, and I think she'd rather keep them all together at this time. Ultimate goal, and this is down the road, and not to hopefully open up a big can of worms, but ultimate goal is to really have a new building out by the water department where Ashley's crew would go and be there with the water department and all housed together in that building, or perhaps it's a modular sometime in the next few years. But if this was converted into office space, would not have sufficient room to bring her whole staff over, and hers is really the only staff left over there, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Ashley?
Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, so the staff members that the mayor is referring to are the Stormwater Division, and they're a team of 4. So there's also Bruce Mills, the Transportation Deputy, Rob McDonald, our Director, myself, and we have a hydrogeologist as well. And we're hoping for a wastewater engineer in this budget. So there are a handful of staff there still left over that we would need to find space for if that were to happen. Some of those could go to different locations, I recognize. So, thanks.
Any questions for Ashley on that before she? Okay, very good. So comments, discussion, anything on any of those thoughts, ideas? Councilor Stoddard?
Mr. Mayor, I went through the contract that Hilton and Company gave us regarding their fees for the coming year. And I've taken the liberty of, because of my prior contacts in my prior life with the corporate office, I've come up with actually 2, what I think is outstanding legal folks that have a lot of experience in city government, city legal stuff. And when I asked them for a budget, looking at their budget compared to what we would be paying Hilti, it's substantially less. So I would, whatever we do, I hope we can get an office here where the gym is, or partial, whatever, because we would be saving a lot of money. And I gave most of the information to our president already, and if there's more coming yet that I need to acquire, and I'll give that to him also. But there are substantial savings having an in-house lawyer or legal system like that, including a secretary or paralegal, and compared to the contract that we'll be signing with Mr. Hilti and Company. So.
Yeah, very good. I think it definitely could be looked at in the future, just the proposal is not in this budget year right now, so on that. Anything else? Councilor Allgood?
Yeah, just real quick. Is there a long-term plan or a couple-year plan on dealing with the old City Hall property? What are we going to do there? Is there an idea?
I'm eyeing Madam Geyer just behind you. If you thought I'm like Chris, I think I've given him the eye when I was giving it to Debbie. So there's discussion. Looks like Chief Foley's not here, but we anticipate at a very near future city council meeting to bring forward a workshop. So obviously it won't be tonight because it hasn't been noticed, but at the next city council meeting,
Well, it's going to be the
second city council meeting, we will
I
have a
just
workshop
talked
to discuss
Chief
that.
Raleigh today, so it'd be the
That very
second
item.
meeting in August, would be a workshop, followed by the action item. That first meeting, which is a Wednesday, by the way, in
So workshop, the
September.
second meeting in August, and then followed by an action item, the first meeting in September.
Right, which would be
So.
September the 4th, yes.
So that will be coming forward.
Perfect. And then the last thing I had is for Ray Lynn. Based on all the hours of conversation we had here, are you good to publish something? Are you there, or do we need to do something else?
I mean, yes, I am there. I guess one question I do need, I think we're good on just taking the 7.4, but the foregone, I think I just need a definite yes or no. Like, I don't have that factored into the budget, but I just want to make sure, because it was mentioned, that it's a for sure no. And then, because, I mean, I think with the adjustments and working with the chief and the moving, that number that you see today is going to change, that deficit number. I can't, the plan would be to definitely keep it under that $1 million, but that number is going to change.
And with that foregone, would that help? We could use that to help with what fire proposed tonight, correct?
That is correct.
So even if we didn't take all of it, at least some of that could be taken to help offset the proposal that Chief Frawley presented tonight.
Yeah,
So we're going to see some differences before this is done.
that is correct.
Councilor Dittenber?
First of all, Raylan, thank you for doing all this work. You've probably put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this process over the last 3 or 4 months, and we've relied on you to give expert answers for the police department, the fire department, for everybody, and you've done a great job, and so I appreciate that. Even if we spend 6 hours, hour and a half at a time, or 8 hours, an hour and a half at a time, I just want to make sure that, at least I recognize, and I think I'll speak for most of City Council, that you are truly the budget expert here, and we appreciate all the work that you put into this, so hang in there, we're almost done, and you can start all over again, so thank you.
Councilor Static, did you have another?
No.
Oh, good, okay. Okay, anything else at this juncture? Councilor
I
Register?
just think this was a really good way to do it, which was breaking it up and then coming back like this. And so I think it feels like we're so much more on the same page now. And hopefully that makes your job easier when you get ready to publish it. And everybody knows what we're doing, and that was it.
Perfect, sounds great. It sounds like we will have a few emails coming out just confirming a few things, wrapping that up in that regards. And again, once it is published, it can come down, and that we just cannot come up. So we do appreciate the feedback on some of those points, and we'll finalize some of those final decisions at that time. But if there's I don't see any other green lights, so now.
Can
Oh,
we
yes,
just
go
get a
ahead.
yes or no on foregone? I
Oh,
think-
foregone.
Yes.
So yes or no? So
Mr. Mayor, can it specifically be used for police and fire, or if we take it, does it have to be spread amongst many other departments?
It can be specifically used for police and fire.
Okay, so I'm good as long as it's spent on police and fire.
I agree with that.
Councilor Williams?
Same.
Okay. And again, doesn't mean you have to take it right. If you put it in there, you can still reduce it down. So it sounds like we will have that in there, and then if you do change your mind or whatever, that can
Then
reduce
can
that.
we get the dog?
The dog? Oh, the dog?
I was rooting for the dog, so just so you know.
But I heard a no. So, okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So we will have that in there and then move forward in that direction. Thank you so much. That ends our workshop for this evening. Go home and watch some Olympics.